For 1 minute, the earth stopped breathing. No wind, no shift of air, no trembling deep within the soil. At that invisible hour between night and dawn, the instruments watching from the sky saw something they could not name. A stillness so complete it looked impossible. The magnetic lines froze. Every signal went flat, as though the planet itself had closed its eyes. You are listening to Whispers of the Universe. If your heart is kind enough to stay, even a quiet moment of your presence keeps this small corner of silence alive. Now, breathe slowly with me and step into the minute when Earth forgot to exhale. The records began in silence, not a poet's dream, but a truth measured by machines. Across observatories scattered over the world, the same pattern appeared, a smooth, unbroken line, calm and soundless. No storm from the sun, no burst of radiation, no trace of interference, only quiet. The scientists who looked at those lines said it lasted a minute. But in that minute, everything living kept moving as if nothing had changed. Waves continued to rise and fall. Birds still crossed the air. And yet, something underneath all motion had paused, the hidden rhythm that makes everything move. You would not have heard it if you were standing outside, but you might have felt it, the way one feels a missing heartbeat, a moment when the familiar background hum of the world slipped away, leaving behind only space. Some called it a magnetic rest, others called it a coincidence. But there were a few who felt a deeper truth, that the planet had simply taken a breath inward and held it. The idea sounds strange only if you forget how alive this world truly is. The oceans inhale through their endless waves and exhale through clouds. The forests breathe with light and dark, with dawn and dusk. Even the molten heart beneath our feet rises and falls, a slow lung of fire and stone. Every gust of wind, every tide, every storm is the sound of Earth remembering to breathe. And that night, for one long inhale, it stopped. In the stillness, no one panicked, because some silences are not warnings, they are acts of remembering. Perhaps the planet was resetting its rhythm. Perhaps it was listening to itself. Perhaps it wanted to see if we were still listening too. Long before science, the old ones spoke of this. They said the earth sighs when the balance between life and stillness begins to change. When it sighs, forests bloom. When it sleeps, mountains grow. When it wakes, rivers run again. So maybe that night of silence was not an error of instruments, but a prayer of the world itself. A single breath between creation and renewal. Close your eyes for a moment. Place your hands over your chest. Feel that slow rhythm beneath your skin. That is not only your breath, it is the planet's rhythm, echoing inside your ribs. Every heart, every wave, every motion is a translation of that same invisible pulse. It moves through clouds, through bones, through dreams. It turns sleeping into breathing, and breathing into life. And if Earth once stopped, it did not stop to die. It stopped to remind everything alive that even the greatest of beings must pause, must remember, must rest. Now, as you listen, let your breathing fall into the same pace as the ground beneath you. Inhale when the night grows darker. Exhale when the silence begins to hum again. The pause that once covered the world is still here. It only moved inside us. And when morning comes and the magnetic fields whisper back into motion, remember this: it is not the world awakening. It is you, waking together with it. And yet, there is something beneath that waking silence. Something that hums even when every other sound has vanished. If you place your ear close to the ground, in a field far from cities, where even the air seems to rest, you might feel it. Not hear, feel. A trembling slower than heartbeat, deeper than thunder. The scientists call it the hum of the planet, a constant murmur that never stops. It has been there since before the first dawn, before the air learned to shimmer, before the oceans began their eternal breath. This hum moves through stone, through water, through the veins of every mountain. It is the slow pulse of a living body. Long ago, Those who had no machines still sensed it. They pressed their palms to the earth and spoke softly to what they believed were spirits. But what they felt was not spirit. It was the same low rhythm that modern seismographs now record, waves so gentle, so patient, that they need no storm to wake them. The earth sings in notes too slow for us to name, between 2 and 7 cycles for every 1,000 heartbeats of a man. A voice older than language, older than fear. You may think of it as vibration, but vibration is only a shadow of meaning. It is the rhythm of breath, stretched over continents. Each ocean swell, each roll of the tide, presses gently on the floor of the sea, sending long waves through rock and salt and iron. Those waves never truly end. They merge, meet again, collide softly in the dark. The sum of them becomes what our machines now call the background hum. But to those who listen without calculation, it feels like the body of the world remembering itself. Some say this hum is born from storms colliding far across the seas, where lightning strikes water and sends shock through depth. Others say it comes from the constant dance between air and ocean, where pressure breathes in and out like lungs too wide for sight. Yet even these explanations sound like poetry dressed as science, for no equation has yet caught the fullness of this tone. It moves not only through crust and mantle, but through time itself. When the dinosaurs walked, they walked upon this same hum. When the first human raised his eyes to the sky, this sound was already beneath his feet. Imagine a night where nothing moves, no cars, no voices, no wind. Now, imagine placing your hand on the soil. You will feel something, a slow wave rising, fading, rising again. That is the pulse of the planet, older than any story we have told. And when you stand long enough, something curious happens. Your own heartbeat begins to slow. Your breathing starts to fall into rhythm with it. You are not imitating the world, you are remembering how to be part of it. Every creature does this without knowing. The migration of whales follows invisible tides of magnetism. The blooming of forests answers to the subtle shift of sunlight measured in breaths of the planet. Even the cells within our blood turn in quiet response to electric whispers that come not from our hearts, but from the sky above and the stone below. When the earth breathes in, the oceans rise ever so slightly. When it breathes out, the air cools and drifts. And through all of this, we sleep, we wake, we love, we grieve, never knowing that our smallest sighs are echoes of something vast. In the old days, monks in hidden monasteries would sit for hours upon the ground in silence. They said they could hear the heart of the world. They did not know of magnetic fields or resonant frequencies. They knew only that the soil trembled softly, and in that trembling, they felt peace. Perhaps peace has always been a form of synchronization, a return to the world's own tempo. The hum has never ceased, not once. Even during that strange minute when all measurable vibrations stopped, something deeper remained, something no instrument could touch. The silence that science recorded was only silence on the surface, like the pause between two breaths. But beneath that pause, the hidden pulse continued steady, patient, forgiving. It is like the rhythm of the ocean floor, where hot currents move through cracks of stone, spreading warmth into the dark. The ocean itself may look still, but in its bones, it never sleeps. Perhaps that is why people find calm beside the sea. The brain recognizes the ancient frequency of home. The rolling waves, the sighing air, all whisper in the same pattern as the hum of the ground beneath us. We think it is the sound of water. It is not. It is the sound of life remembering its source. You cannot silence it, even in death. The body returns to soil, and the soil carries that vibration onward. Everything that was alive becomes rhythm again. Nothing ends. It only joins the deeper music. For a long time, humanity forgot this. We built walls of sound, engines, machines, voices shouting through wires. The hum became buried under noise, but it never left. It waits just below the threshold, like a heartbeat under layers of cloth. And sometimes, when the noise dies after a storm, or in the still hour before dawn, it rises again. You can feel it if you listen not with ears, but with skin. A slow movement, not to be understood, only recognized. There are stories of people who lived their entire lives near volcanoes or deep forests. They said they could tell when the earth was sick because its breathing changed. When the hum turned sharp, they would move to safer ground, guided not by maps, but by instinct. They had no instruments, only trust, and most survived. Science is only now learning to do what they once did, to listen. Sensors scattered around the planet record the Earth's low voices day and night. The data flows endlessly, tracing invisible tides of pressure and gravity. Each tremor, each long wave, speaks of motion we cannot see but live within. When the readings are slowed down and turned into sound, it becomes music. A slow, endless chord, as if a cello were being played by mountains. It is neither beautiful nor frightening. It is both. What makes it powerful is not its tone, but its patience. It has no beginning, no end. It teaches us that time, too, is a breath. Inhale, exhale, rise, fall, creation, dissolution. If you could shrink yourself small enough to live inside a grain of sand, you would still hear it. If you could grow large enough to hold the moon in your palm, you would still hear it. Because the hum does not belong to place, it belongs to being. We spend our lives seeking meaning in words, in light, in thought. But maybe meaning is rhythm. Maybe consciousness itself is only the awareness of breath across eternity. Every time you stop to listen, truly listen, you realign with that truth. The noise of your mind fades. The pulse beneath you becomes clearer. And for a fleeting instant you understand. This hum is the sound of unity, the sound of everything moving together, yet allowing each thing to move apart. So when you walk tomorrow along a road or through a garden, pause for a moment. Feel the faint shaking beneath your soles. That is not the echo of your own steps. It is the whisper of a world breathing beneath you. In that recognition lies the beginning of calm, because once you realize the ground itself is alive, you can never again feel truly alone. Let your breath slow once more. Let your thoughts dissolve until only the rhythm remains, the hum of the planet, the hum of you. The two are not different sounds. They are the same voice, remembering itself through countless forms. And as night settles and the stars emerge, faint, steady, patient, listen carefully. The world is breathing again. And somewhere inside that infinite breath, you are too. And deeper still, where light begins to fade and sound turns heavy, the breath of the planet grows visible. Every current, every wave, every shifting molecule of salt and heat is part of the same slow exhale. The ocean, vast and restless, is not only water, it is the lung of the world. If you drift far enough from the coast, the air above the sea becomes different. It tastes cleaner, softer, almost newborn. That is not imagination. It is the trace of breath oxygen released from countless microscopic beings floating within the water. Tiny, unseen. They gather sunlight through translucent bodies, drawing carbon into themselves and exhaling the life we breathe. They are called phytoplankton, but their truer name could be light eaters. For every tree that releases air in the forest, there are 1,000 more of these quiet creatures doing the same in the endless blue. Every morning, when sunlight spills over the curve of the world, billions of these cells awaken. They stretch their fragile membranes toward the glow, and the planet inhales. By night, they sink a little deeper, and the world exhales. This is not poetry, it is rhythm. The same rhythm that moves through every living being, from the lungs of whales to the small breathing of a sleeping child. The sea is alive with this pulse. You can feel it if you float there long enough. The water lifts you, lowers you, as though it remembers how to breathe you back into calm. But even lungs can falter. The ocean, too, can lose its breath. In places where the water warms too quickly, the phytoplankton die before dawn. Their bodies sink, leaving the surface bare, and the air above them grows thinner, harsher. Without them, oxygen falls, and the planet gasps softly, unseen. Scientists call these zones dead waters, but they are not truly dead. They are the pauses between breaths, the moments when the sea forgets to inhale. The more carbon we send into the sky, the harder it becomes for these tiny beings to breathe. Acid gathers in their world, turning the water heavy and bitter. Whole regions fall silent. The lungs of Earth tighten. It happens slowly, almost politely. No sound, no cry, just a gradual thinning of the invisible air. And one morning, a whale surfaces in a place where there is no song, no plankton, no light. It opens its mouth, expecting life, and finds only silence. Somewhere, in a laboratory far away, a graph begins to bend downward. Someone calls it data, but it is not data. It is the faint sound of the ocean forgetting how to breathe. When you stand on the shore and watch the waves, you are watching lungs at work. Each swell draws in air, mixes it with salt and warmth, and releases it back to the sky. This is the oldest exchange there is. We breathe what the ocean gives. The ocean breathes what we release. The cycle is sacred in its simplicity. The forests and the seas do not compete. They complete each other. When one exhales, the other inhales. When one suffers, both grow weak. In this dance, we are not outsiders. Every breath we take joins the rhythm, a soft echo of the planet's deeper respiration. Close your eyes for a moment. Take one long inhale. Now, let it go. The air that leaves you will find its way over mountains, across rivers, until it reaches the sea again. There, it will sink into the waves, and some small plankton will drink it in, turn it into life, and send it back to you in a future dawn. You are not apart from the ocean. You are the continuation of its breath. There was a time when the ancients knew this by feeling. They did not measure oxygen or carbon. They watched the tides and learned the body of the sea as one learns a friend. They spoke of the ocean as a mother, its breath endless, its moods divine. They built their lives on its rhythm. They set sail only when the waves inhaled and rested when they exhaled. To them, breathing was prayer, and the sea was the only temple that mattered. But we, in our noise and hurry, forgot how to listen. We built walls to keep the tide out, machines to imitate the wind, and we called it progress. Yet the more we cut ourselves from the rhythm, the louder the silence became. Because when the ocean loses its breath, everything that depends on it begins to tremble. The forests no longer receive the same softness of air. The rains arrive late or not at all. The ground dries, and seeds sleep longer in the dark. Animals wander in confusion, their instincts broken. And we, standing at the edge of this chain, feel an unease we cannot name. We call it climate, but beneath that word lies something simpler, a planet that is trying to remember how to breathe evenly again. The breath of the sea does not move like ours. It stretches over centuries. When the ocean inhales too much heat, it takes decades to release it. That is why storms grow stronger, why the winds now sound slightly different than they did before. The sea has changed its rhythm. It pants where it once sighed. It gasps where it once sang. And yet, it still tries, because life is stubborn. Even now, new forms of plankton bloom in places once barren. They shimmer with impossible colors, teaching us that breath, even when damaged, can adapt. Perhaps that is the truest form of resilience, not strength, but rhythm restored. Deep beneath the surface, there are forests made of kelp, taller than towers. They sway slowly, their leaves filtering sunlight into shade for thousands of creatures. Each movement of those leaves releases air. You could swim through them and breathe in that exhalation, and in doing so, breathe what the earth itself breathes. Divers sometimes speak of the stillness there, how every sound fades until only bubbles remain. They say that for a moment, you can forget where your body ends and the sea begins. That feeling, that borderless peace, is what the planet feels in every breath. It is not a metaphor. It is the foundation of everything that stays alive. Even the storms serve this rhythm. When they tear across the surface, churning the waves, they are helping the sea exchange air more quickly. A violent form of breathing, but breathing nonetheless. So you see, the fury and the calm are not opposites. They are two halves of the same exhale. When the typhoon rages, it is the ocean trying to clear its throat. When the water's still, it is the ocean gathering itself for the next inhale. To curse the storm is to misunderstand it. It is only the body of the world keeping itself alive. There is a moment each morning when the air above the sea turns silver. Not yet bright, not yet dark, just silver. That is the moment of equilibrium, when the inhale becomes the exhale. The wind hesitates, the water flattens, and for a few breaths, the entire planet seems to hover between two states of being. If you are ever there to witness it, listen carefully. The world is perfectly still, and yet completely awake. It is breathing you, and you are breathing it. That is the secret of life hidden in plain sight. The world breathes through what it creates. The trees, the clouds, the animals, even the smallest flicker of thought within your mind, all of them are part of that respiration. And though the forms may change, the act remains constant. If someday the oceans fall silent, the earth will still hold the memory of their breath. Every grain of sand once belonged to a wave. Every cloud still carries salt. Even the air that fills your lungs now was born from a sea that sang long before you. You are breathing the history of tides. You are exhaling into tomorrow's rain. And so, when you feel lost or small, stand beside water. Let it remind you that existence itself is an act of inhaling and letting go. The sea has done this since the beginning. It will continue long after we are gone. Because the ocean does not belong to time. It is time, a breath that never ends. Perhaps that is what the strange silence meant, that minute when Earth stopped breathing. Perhaps the sea, too, paused, not in death, but in remembrance, as if it wanted to remind us that breath is not a right, it is a gift, and every gift must be renewed by gratitude. Tonight, as you lie still, let your own breathing become slower. Imagine each inhale pulling the scent of the sea, each exhale releasing it back. This is not meditation, it is participation. You are joining the oldest cycle there is. Let the sound of the world's hidden pulse return beneath your chest. Feel the weight of air and water moving together, rising, falling, as one. And somewhere deep below that rhythm, in the dark where no light reaches, the ocean sighs again softly, steadily, endlessly, and the earth remembers how to breathe. And upward, where sky and stone exchange their quiet vows, the breath of the planet turns electric. You cannot see it, not with waking eyes, but it is there, a soft architecture of lines that rise from the poles and curve back like the ribs of a vast, invisible creature. The world wears this body of light, the way you wear your own pulse, always, without effort, without thought. Stand in an open field and raise your hand. Nothing touches your palm, and yet the space around your fingers is not empty. It is threaded with the faintest current, a living order that shelters every cloud, every wing, every whisper of rain. This is the planet's magnetic breath, an inhale and exhale written in the language of fields. When the planet inhales, the lines tighten, drawing close, a gentle narrowing that keeps the high storms of space at bay. When the planet exhales, the lines loosen, a slow release that lets the sky dream in long, soft waves. Between these motions, everything alive arranges itself, like birds finding their place in darkness by a star that never appears, yet never fails. The breath is not sound, not light, and yet it has music. The air rings with delicate pulses that flow around the world in endless loops, circling again and again, a chorus too patient for ordinary hearing. Some call this the murmur of the sky, others call it the thought of the air. But whatever the name, it steadies us the way a heartbeat steadies a child asleep on a mother's chest. On certain nights, the breath grows visible. The north and the south learn to speak in color, and the sky flowers with veils that drift and fold. That light is not just beauty. It is the mark of a conversation, the world meeting the wind from the sun and choosing with great care how much to allow and how much to refuse. Every curtain of green, every river of purple is a sentence in that dialogue, a soft yes, a softer no. And then there are the tremors, not the brutal quakes of stone, but a quivering in the field itself, a tremble you might feel if you grew still enough to hear light thinking. Sometimes this trembling passes gently, and the sky clears as if nothing had happened. Sometimes it gathers and lingers, and the horizon becomes a breathing instrument, deep and resonant, tuned to a patience older than any weather. Birds carry small compasses inside their bones. They ride these lines the way a sailor rides an unmarked current, gliding through a map that can be lost only by noise. When the field trembles too hard, they hesitate mid-flight, turn in a slow, uncertain circle, then continue, as if listening for a familiar voice that briefly lowered itself to a whisper. Whales do the same beneath the waves. Seeds, tiny and wordless, wait on the rhythm of light drawn along those unseen ribs, then choose the hour to wake. We, who have turned our ears toward engines and our eyes toward glass, forget that we do this also. Your sleep deepens when the sky grows quiet. Your thoughts clear when the field settles into its old, generous cadence. Think of the field as a hearth around which the wind of space gathers. The flames are not of fire, but of order. They curl and subside, they flicker, and they rest. If the flames leap too high, the room brightens with eerie beauty. If the flames sink too low, a hush falls that is not comfort, but warning. Most of the time, the fire simply lives, and we live within it, warmed without noticing. There are moments, though, when the breath of the planet and the breath of the sun meet in such perfect balance that the room becomes a chapel, the compass settles. The air takes on a weight that is neither heavy nor light, only exact. In such instance, the world feels close enough to hold. You sense a hand upon your shoulder, though no one stands behind you. It is not a spirit. It is the field itself, the generous skin of the earth, pressing its calm against your nervous body. We have given this calm a clever name. We have carved it into charts and learned to summon it on screens. But beneath the symbols is a single truth. The planet keeps watch. It keeps watch the way a steady friend keeps watch beside a bed through a long night, not asking questions, not offering advice, only being there with the kind of attention that allows sleep to return. When storms far away strike the wind of space, the watcher does not panic. It leans into its own shape, gathers its lines close, and holds. Sometimes it cannot hold everything, and light spills across the crowns of the world. Sometimes it holds so well that the night stays ordinary and no one knows how near the fire came. Either way, the watcher remains, unthanked and unafraid. The trembling we speak of is not always born beyond the sky. The field listens also to the waters and the stones. The great oceans shift and the lines quiver. The deep rocks turn in their slow sleep, and the lines answer with a sigh. Even forests, when they breathe in unison at dawn, write a faint kindness into the air that the field reads and returns. This is the hidden counsel in which weather is decided and seasons are remembered. If you have ever felt a sudden ease while walking under an open sky, a sense that your body has been placed correctly within the day, you have felt this counsel at work. It is not a miracle. It is the precise way balance feels inside a human frame. And yet, balance is not the same as stillness. The field must move, It must tremble a little, must loosen and tighten, must drift and return. A heart that never beats is not a heart. A breath that never changes pace is not a breath. In the same way, the magnetic body of the earth must sway to stay alive. The minute of silence we remember now was not the death of this motion. It was the space between closing and opening, the blink that lets the eye keep seeing. During that pause, the lines did not break. They rested. They turned their faces inward, as if a choir paused between two long notes to taste the quiet from which their sound was born. Afterward, the trembling resumed, but with a difference only patience could notice. The pulses returned a shade, slower, then a shade surer, as if the world had found a deeper part of its range and chosen to sing from there. Many noticed nothing. Some slept better. A few woke with a clarity they could not explain. The fields of crops lifted in a wind that was not wind. The rivers calmed themselves at their edges. Children laughed without a reason, which is to say, for the oldest reason of all. Call this imagination, if you like, but remember that imagination is the name we give to the sense that connects hidden things. The field connects hidden things all the time. It carries whispers from pole to pole. It tells a feather which way is home. It teaches cold iron in the core to keep turning so that air and sea may continue their untiring exchange. There is a tenderness in this duty. The world does not shield us with force alone. It shields us by rhythm. By keeping to its breath, it invites ours to settle, and in settling, to heal. That is why a night under open stars restores so much without doing anything at all. The body is reminded of how the air holds its shape. The mind learns the tune again, and the heart, grateful, follows. If you listen closely, you will hear a soft pattern in the thunder, a cadence within the rain, a quiet order inside the seeming chaos of a windy afternoon. You may not name it, but you will trust it. Trust is what truth feels like before it becomes a theory. Trust is the body's way of bowing to the field that keeps it from being undone. Sometimes the field speaks in color. Sometimes it speaks in sleep. On rare nights, it speaks in a hush so complete that the proudest equations seem, for a breath, like children's drawings left on a kitchen table. Not wrong, not useless, only small before the thing they tried to love by measuring. There is a lesson in that hush, not a lesson of fear, but of relationship. We do not stand under the sky as strangers negotiating a fragile truce. We are woven into the sky. The voice is woven into a song. Take the voice away, and the song remains a shape, but not a life. Take the field away, and the sky remains a color, but not a home. So breathe with it now. Inhale as if the air has just been made. Exhale as if the world is learning to be gentle by watching you. When your breath steadies, notice the calm that gathers in your hands, in your throat, behind your eyes. That calm is the field visiting you, reminding your small and holy body that it belongs here. If the trembling grows one day, do not rush to dread. Let your first response be listening. Listening is not weakness. It is alignment. Let the alignment spread through your bones. Let it tell your hurried hours what to keep and what to set down. The field makes these choices every moment. What to let through, what to tend, what to send away. You are allowed to learn from it. And when the sky flowers again in the far north and the deep south, when light falls in sheets that drift, like breath made visible, step outside if you can. Look up. Do not make a wish. Make a vow. Promise to remember that you live inside a guardian. Promise to breathe with it, not against it. Promise to become quiet often enough that its quiet can find you. Because the trembling is not only a shield, it is a language. And within that language, the planet tells us with immeasurable patience that we are safe enough to sleep and strong enough to wake. When morning comes, you will feel the difference in small ways. The cup you lift will seem a little warmer in your hand. The path you walk will open a little sooner beneath your feet. You will notice a bird's hesitation turning back into a straight line. You will find your words choosing softness even when no one is listening. All this from lines no eye can see, from a breath no ear can hear. Such is the kindness of this roof of order above us. Such is the generosity of a planet that trembles just enough to keep loving what it carries. And when the day grows late and the first stars appear, wait for that moment when the field draws a long, slow breath and the whole horizon seems to settle. That is your cue. Let your shoulders fall. Let your jaw loosen. Let your eyes close, not as escape, but as offering. You are returning the attention that has held you since the night you were born. The world exhales, you follow. The world inhales, you follow. There is no distance left to cross. There is only one rhythm, shared by sky and stone and skin, trembling just enough to keep the universe from breaking, and just enough to let it sing. And softly now, we will step from the electric breath of the sky back toward the ground, where metal and fire turn in their slow cathedral, and the deep heart of the planet keeps time for oceans and storms. Listen, the mantle stirs like a sleeping animal, and the crust answers with a patience learned across ages. What rises from that depth will meet the air you carry and complete a circle older than words. Come closer. The next breath waits below your feet. And downward, where the roots of mountains touch the molten dark, the breath of the planet becomes weight. We walk upon it every day, unknowing. Each step presses into a rhythm too slow for memory, too vast for fear. Below our feet, the world breathes through fire. The stones inhale heat, the magma exhales light, and the crust above them flexes in the long patience of endurance. If you could see through the soil past the glitter of mineral veins and the slow pulse of buried rivers, you would find a landscape alive in silence. There, in the shadow where sunlight never travels, currents of molten rock drift like thoughts, rising, cooling, falling again. The cycle repeats without haste or pause, and through it, the planet keeps its temperature, its balance, its quiet heart. The ancients called it the underworld. They imagined gods of flame and iron, creatures forged from breath and smoke. But what they truly sensed was the movement itself, the endless inhale and exhale of heat. When magma rises, it does not rush. It lifts, like a deep sigh traveling through stone. When it falls, it does not collapse. It descends as though the earth were emptying its lungs, clearing the ash of 1,000 centuries. This is the secret lung beneath all lungs. It does not need air. It breathes through pressure and gravity, through the constant conversation between liquid and solid. Every volcano is a mouth in that body. Every tremor, a heartbeat. Every eruption, a shout that is half pain, half renewal. The crust above may crack and rearrange, but the magma never truly dies. It waits. It thickens. It listens for the cue that the balance has shifted. Then, slowly, it moves again, drawing the world toward equilibrium. And as it moves, the continents drift. The slow crawl of plates, the rise of mountains, the folding of valleys, all of them are gestures of respiration. The planet expands, contracts, settles. It breathes. We, who measure time in days, cannot easily see this. But if you could stretch your perception to the scale of stone, you would watch the continents rise and sink like a chest in sleep. The Himalayas lift by the width of a fingernail each year, a small inhale for a planet this size. The oceans widen. The ridges along the seafloor spread apart like the ribs of a creature preparing to rest. To witness this is to understand that stillness is only movement unseen. And yet, for all its vastness, this breathing is fragile. A small change in pressure, a tremor of imbalance, and the deep air shifts. The molten tide moves differently, and the world's surface rearranges itself in answer. Islands are born, mountains sleep, rivers change their courses. Everything we call permanent is simply a pause in the rhythm of stone. We live within that pause. We build our homes upon its surface. We name its lines. We trust it will not move too much while we dream. But the planet does not promise stillness, it promises continuity. When one cycle ends, another begins. Each rise of magma cools into rock, and that rock, over ages, melts again. Life grows, dies, and feeds the next breath. Nothing wasted, nothing lost. The great irony is that the deeper we go, the quieter it becomes. At first, there is sound, the murmur of rivers, the shiver of fault lines, the soft friction of crystal against crystal. Then, at a certain depth, there is only hum. Not silence exactly, but a single note held for eternity. That note is the foundation of everything we call music. Without it, no other rhythm could exist. It is the planet's baseline, the pulse beneath oceans and storms, beneath our own fragile thoughts. When you stand barefoot on the ground, that note moves through you. It travels from the soles of your feet to your spine, and from there to your heart. Your pulse answers it faintly, instinctively. It is the oldest duet in existence. Every culture has known this in its own way. The drummers of the desert tribes would beat their instruments in time with the earth beneath them, believing the ground was listening. The monks of the northern mountains chanted in caves, their voices bouncing through stone, their breaths synchronized with echoes that had traveled miles through rock. Even now, without realizing, we seek the same communion. We build cathedrals of concrete and glass, and still we find peace only when we stand upon unbroken soil. Because somewhere in that contact, the body remembers the pattern it was born to follow. You can test this truth easily. Step outside after rain. Find a place where the earth is soft. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. You will feel the faint draw beneath you. A pull so gentle it might be mistaken for imagination. That is the undercurrent of gravity, the small echo of the planet's deeper inhale. When you exhale, let your breath fall through your body into the ground. Let it join the heat below. It will not disappear. It will become part of the endless conversation happening there. The magma does not reject what comes from the surface. It absorbs it, translates it into warmth, and releases it back, someday, as a spark of new land. In this way, the earth practices forgiveness constantly. Every fragment of ruin becomes potential again. Every burnt forest becomes a field. Every fossil becomes a whisper of memory folded into the next age. Forgiveness, you see, is only another form of breathing. It is the exhale that allows life to continue. Sometimes, the breathing below us grows louder. The plates grind, the ridges flare with heat, and the planet coughs, a volcano's column of ash rising into the sky, a roar that seems to come from the beginning of time. We fear this, but the earth does not. It is not rage, it is regulation, a heart releasing pressure, a lung clearing itself of smoke. Every eruption is both an ending and a birth. From its fire come minerals that feed the soil, ash that carries the memory of the planet's deep chemistry to the surface. Every forest that grows upon volcanic ground breathes easier than those rooted elsewhere. Even destruction is part of the rhythm. And then, when the fire sleeps again, the ash settles, rains come, seeds return, the mountain sighs back into stillness, and the world continues. We think of fire as chaos, but in the deep earth, fire is patience itself. It moves slowly, precisely, turning stone into liquid and liquid back to stone, millimeter by millimeter, century by century. In that movement lies wisdom, a knowledge of timing that no creature on the surface can match. Perhaps that is why the oldest myths placed creation not in the heavens, but in the underworld. Because only what burns slowly enough can give birth to form. Only what breathes without air can sustain the long dream of existence. There are places where you can feel this breathing most clearly, near geothermal springs, where the ground exhales steam with the scent of minerals. In the tremor before an earthquake, when the air thickens with anticipation. Even in a deep cave, when the temperature changes with no wind to cause it. Each of these moments is the planet adjusting its lungs. When magma cools, it releases gas, hydrogen, carbon, vapor, traces of ancient storms trapped in mineral. Those gases travel upward, mixing with the breath of forests and oceans, joining the endless exchange that makes atmosphere. What we breathe now may have slept for 1,000,000 years beneath mountains. What we exhale tonight may return to the mantle someday, carried by rain and stone. There is no hierarchy in this exchange, no layer more sacred than another. Everything feeds everything else. The surface breathes because the depths allow it. The depths remain alive because the surface gives it purpose. It is a perfect circle, and we are part of it, small, fleeting, necessary. At times, the underworld's rhythm grows unsteady. The inner currents twist, the outer shell strains. To us, these moments appear as calamity. But from the planet's view, they are corrections, a body finding its breath again after holding it too long. We may suffer in those corrections. Our cities may shake, our mountains may shift. But perhaps, if we learn to see beyond our own scale, we would hear the compassion within those tremors. They are reminders. They say, do not mistake stillness for health. Do not confuse silence with peace. Breath is movement. Life is motion. We must move with it, or be broken by trying to stay still. Close your eyes again. Imagine your body as a small mountain. Your ribs are its ridges, your breath its wind. Now, imagine the warmth beneath your heart, a molten glow that does not consume, only sustains. That warmth is your core, and it is no different from the planet's core. You share its rhythm. When you inhale, feel the air descend all the way down, past thought, past fear, until it meets that hidden fire. When you exhale, let the warmth rise through you, like magma through a conduit, releasing what is no longer needed. Do this long enough, and you will understand why silence heals. Silence is not absence. It is equilibrium. It is the space in which all movements align. The earth's lungs are many. The sea, the field, the forest, the fire, each breathes in its own tongue. But beneath them all, the true pulse continues, steady, unending. When it slows, we slow. When it quickens, we stir. When it rests, we dream. That is why sleep feels like falling. It is not a descent into nothingness. It is a return to the rhythm of tonight. Tonight, when you close your eyes, listen for that sound. It will not roar. It will not sing. It will hum, low and constant, the heartbeat of the world, traveling upward through the soles of your feet. Let it carry you. Let it remind you that beneath all noise, beneath all grief, there is this one enduring breath, slow, molten, alive. And somewhere in that dark below, where magma folds and rocks, remember, the planet takes another long inhale and waits for you to exhale in answer. And then, one night, when no one was watching, the breath stopped again. Not for long, not forever. Just long enough for the machines to notice, and for every scientist, awake beneath the glow of a monitor, to feel, without understanding why, a quiet rise in their own chest, the kind of rise that happens when something vast remembers to pause. The clocks marked it as an ordinary night. The oceans rolled as they always do. Cities slept, lights hummed, the sky kept its distance. But deep within the magnetic belly of the world, something withdrew. Across the planet, the sensors that measured the heartbeat of the field fell flat. Lines that should have wavered with endless, gentle motion became still. No peaks, no valleys, only a level silence stretching longer than anyone had ever recorded. At the observatory in Kyoto, a graduate student named Ren watched the curve on her screen stop moving. She thought it was an error. She checked the power supply, the transmission lines, the calibration. All was perfect, too perfect. She blinked, and for the first time in her life, she heard the sound of nothing. A continent away, in a small research station in Alaska, another team saw the same stillness. Their data lines aligned with Kyoto's, like two pulses falling into one long rest. They sent messages across the ocean. "Do you see this too?" And back came the answer, "Yes, it's everywhere." For one full minute, every observatory on Earth listened to silence. It should have been terrifying, but it was not. Those who were awake later described the feeling as calm, a calm so complete that fear could not fit inside it. The air thickened, the lights flickered as if obeying a slower rhythm, and the world seemed to hold itself in balance. Birds did not stir, dogs did not bark. Even the sea grew heavy, its waves moving as though through glass. And then, as gently as it had stopped, the pulse returned. A small ripple in the data, a single heartbeat finding itself again. The fields trembled, the currents flowed, the monitors filled once more with the soft noise of living. At first, they called it coincidence, a synchronization of instruments, perhaps, a fault in the satellite network. But when they compared the internal clocks of the machines, they found no delay, no malfunction. Each had recorded the same moment, down to the fraction of a heartbeat. No system that perfect had ever failed so beautifully. And so began the arguments. Some said it was an external event, a solar wind that brushed past us so gently that only our magnetic breath felt it. But the sun, in those hours, was quiet, no flare, no storm. Others whispered of deep phenomena, movements in the core, a kind of planetary meditation, but the mathematics refused to confirm it. The truth, as always, hid between explanation and wonder. What if the Earth, for reasons beyond our equations, simply decided to rest? If you believe such a thought impossible, consider this. Every living thing pauses. The heart between two beats, the lungs between two breaths, the eyes between two blinks. Even stars, burning for eons, flicker between two waves of fusion. Why should a planet be any different? Perhaps that minute of silence was not an error, but a memory, a return to stillness so complete that everything else had to follow. There were those who felt it in their dreams. A mother in Argentina woke suddenly, believing she had heard her child call her name, but the child slept soundly beside her. A fisherman off the coast of Iceland looked up from his net at the same moment, feeling the air change weight, as if the sky had taken a slow, deliberate breath. No one spoke of it until later, when the reports came out. And then, across the world, a strange recognition spread, as if thousands of hearts had shared a single pause without knowing it. We call such things coincidence because the alternative is too mysterious to fit within the narrow cage of proof. But the soul is older than proof. It recognizes rhythm. In the days that followed, researchers gathered to analyze the data. They layered the recordings from every continent. They expected chaos, each region slightly out of step with the next. Instead, they found harmony, a perfect alignment, as though the world had folded itself into one unified note. It was not total silence. When they amplified the signal, a faint oscillation emerged, like the sound of a single breath held halfway. The frequency was lower than anything human ears could perceive, lower even than the hum of oceans. It was, simply, stillness. A steady tone of waiting. One scientist played it back through speakers. He called his colleagues into the room. They listened. No one spoke. And when the recording ended, each found themselves breathing slower than before. Silence has gravity. It pulls everything toward itself. That night, it pulled the world. Across the globe, people reported a strange clarity in the air. Colors looked sharper, voices carried farther. Even the stars seemed nearer, as though distance had temporarily forgotten how to be distance. For the first time in centuries, the earth and its children shared the same quiet. The elders in remote villages did not find it surprising. To them, it was an old story returning, They had tales of nights when the world took a breath so deep that even the spirits went still to listen. They said those moments marked renewal, a kind of cosmic cleansing, after which the balance of wind and stone began again. In their language, the word for that pause meant both to listen and to forgive. Maybe that is what the world was doing, listening, forgiving. There were, of course, skeptics. There are always skeptics, as there must be. They demanded evidence of causation, of mechanism, of reason. They wanted to know what could stop a magnetic field that has sung without rest since the planet was born. But the silence gave no answers. It was not made of data. It was made of presence. And presence does not explain. It simply exists, and in its existence asks for respect. Imagine, for a moment, that you are the planet. Your lungs are oceans, your heart a sphere of molten iron, your breath the invisible dance of magnet and wind. You have spun for billions of years without pause, without sleep. Would you not, one evening, need to stop and feel the weight of your own body? Would you not want to remind yourself of what it means to be alive, not through motion, but through stillness? Perhaps that is all this was. Not disaster, not miracle, just awareness. A moment when the universe looked at itself through the eyes of its own creation. In the weeks that followed, the data returned to normal. The headlines faded. The reports were filed. And yet, something subtle remained. Some said they felt a difference in the air, a softer pressure, as if the atmosphere itself had learned humility. Gardeners noticed new patterns in the flowering of plants. Migratory animals altered their routes slightly, moving a little slower, a little lower to the ground. No one connected these things officially. But those who watched quietly understood. The earth, once again, had adjusted its rhythm. It had remembered the art of rest. There was one detail, small and easily overlooked. In the second immediately after the silence broke, a faint surge traveled through every sensor, a pulse stronger than any recorded before, a breath drawn not in fear, but in renewal. That pulse carried a frequency found nowhere else in the planet's long history. It lasted less than a second, then dispersed, absorbed into the normal chatter of the field. But those who measured it noticed something remarkable. Its pattern matched the average human heartbeat at rest. Coincidence again, they said. Perhaps, or perhaps, for that brief instant, the rhythm of Earth and the rhythm of humanity were one. There are nights when you can feel echoes of that moment still. When the wind pauses halfway through its own motion, when the sea holds its breath before another wave, when you yourself awaken in the dark for no reason at all. If you listen closely then, you will sense a sound that is not sound, the quiet between two universal breaths. That is the memory of the silence. It has not vanished. It hums beneath the noise of our days, waiting for us to notice. We spend so much of our time trying to keep the world alive, forgetting that the world has kept us alive far longer. We guard it with fear, but it guards us with rhythm. It asks for nothing except the permission to rest. Maybe this minute of silence was not a warning, but a conversation, the planet asking, "Can I stop now, for just a moment, and be still with you?" And we, without realizing, answered, yes. If you could have stood outside that night, somewhere far from machines and wires, you might have felt the sky tilt slightly. You might have felt the ground exhale beneath your feet. You might have felt the air itself become tender. And in that tenderness, you might have recognized what every heart longs to remember, that stillness is not the absence of life. It is its deepest expression. Now, as you lie there, listening to your own breathing, slow, deliberate, imagine the planet breathing with you. When you inhale, the earth inhales through its forests and seas. When you exhale, the world exhales through wind and tide. Somewhere far below, the molten heart turns once more. Somewhere above, the aurora folds its light like a sigh. Everything moves, and then pauses, moves, and pauses. The same old story, told again and again, in the only language that matters, the rhythm of being. For now, let that rhythm hold you. Let it remind you that silence is not emptiness, but balance regained. That even when the instruments fail and the data goes flat, something underneath continues to breathe, patient and true. The sensors will always return to motion. The graphs will always climb again. The heart of the world will always find its next beat. Because the planet is not a machine. It is a body, ancient, luminous, awake. And every so often, it simply needs to close its eyes, to listen to its own breath, to remember what it means to be alive. Now we turn to those who tried to explain it, the watchers who listened to the silence and found themselves speechless, the scientists who measured a miracle and named it anomaly, the thinkers who began to suspect that perhaps consciousness does not belong only to what moves, but also to what waits. The story continues there, in rooms filled with quiet light, where people who spent their lives quantifying the world found themselves humbled by the first thing they could not measure, the stillness of a living planet. And as they listened, they began, slowly, to breathe in time again. They gathered quietly, not in celebration, not in fear, just the slow instinct of people who have seen something larger than themselves and are still trying to fit its outline into language. In a hall filled with pale screens, the scientists sat beneath the hum of the machines that had betrayed them with silence. They replayed the data again and again, each time hoping the pattern would break, that somewhere among the endless columns of numbers they would find the comforting flaw of human error. But there was no flaw, only perfection. A stillness too exact to be mistake, too graceful to be malfunction. At first they spoke in the language they trusted, flux, vector, resonance, amplitude. But the words landed like small stones dropped into deep water and were swallowed whole by what they tried to describe. One physicist from Oslo whispered, "It was not a failure of force, it was the absence of will." The others looked at her, uncertain if she was joking. She wasn't. They could hear the trembling in her breath, the same trembling the field itself had carried before it fell. Silent. At the Kyoto Observatory, Ren stared at her recording in the blue light of the monitors. She had printed the graphs, hung them across the lab wall in a long scroll, a frozen line running through an ocean of data. Everywhere else the records danced, rising and falling like wind. But in the center, there was that straight, breathless minute. She stood before it as though before a painting. Something in its simplicity calmed her. A symmetry without decoration. A truth too quiet to be proven. Her supervisor called it a temporary global harmonic collapse. He said the instruments had fallen into phase cancellation, a rare event where opposing signals erase each other. His explanation was elegant, tidy, lifeless. She nodded politely, but in her chest, she knew it was wrong. Later that night, when everyone had gone, Ren stayed. She turned off the overhead lights, left only the monitors glowing like small moons around her. The silence in the room felt heavier than air, thick enough to lean on. She closed her eyes. In the dark, she could still see the straight line of the graph, a horizon without motion. And in that still image, she felt something move inside her, a recognition she could not name. Maybe the earth had not stopped. Maybe everything else had. Maybe that minute of silence was not the world's pause, but its reminder. Across the sea, in Alaska, a geophysicist named Morgan reviewed the same pattern. He'd spent 40 years studying the rhythm of the planet, the way its magnetic heartbeat rose and fell with the solar wind. He'd always found comfort in its consistency. It was, to him, the closest thing to prayer. When the field went silent, he felt the absence like loss. He sat in his cabin that night, firelight flickering against stacks of old notebooks, and listened to the wind pressing against the glass. It wasn't angry wind, just persistent, as though the sky were breathing through the walls. He thought of all the explanations people had offered: anomalies, alignment, interference. But none of them felt large enough. He wrote one sentence in the margin of his notebook and closed it. "The planet is aware of us." He did not show that sentence to anyone. He barely believed it himself. But he felt better having written it down, as though he had finally spoken to something that had been waiting a very long time to be addressed. Weeks passed. The data remained unchanged, a line of silence bracketed by rhythm. And yet, strange things began to happen around the world. At several stations, the sensors behaved differently. Their calibration drifted not randomly, but in a shared direction, as if they were slowly synchronizing to a new, quieter tempo. It was subtle, a fraction of a pulse, a barely measurable delay. But when the recordings were overlaid, they sang in harmony. The field had returned, but not exactly as before. It had found a slower rhythm, a breath with longer pauses between inhalation and exhalation. The scientists called it magnetic lag. Wren called it grace. News of the phenomenon began to fade from the world of headlines. People grew bored of mystery when no apocalypse followed. But in the quieter corners of the earth, the deserts, the poles, the deep ocean trenches, instruments kept listening, and the planet kept whispering. Somewhere in the European Space Agency, a technician noticed a pattern in the plasma data. The solar wind's charge density rose and fell in perfect sympathy with the planet's new pulse. It was as if the sun and the earth had found a gentler way to speak to each other. The technician printed the graph and pinned it above his desk. He did not report it. He just liked looking at it. It reminded him that even stars and planets could learn to rest. A conference was called, not a grand one, just a gathering of those who refused to let the silence pass without meaning. They met in a small mountain town where the air was thin enough to make each breath deliberate. There, physicists, biologists, philosophers, and one old poet sat around a wooden table and argued softly about the nature of rest. One woman spoke of the Gaia hypothesis that the planet behaves like a single, self-regulating organism. She said the silence might have been a homeostatic breath, a biological correction. A man countered, "But there is no biology in magnetism." The poet, who had been silent, smiled. "There is no biology in love either," he said, "and yet we measure its pulse every day." They laughed, uneasy, but something in the laughter felt like agreement. Outside, the mountains listened. They had seen this before: the cycle of curiosity, denial, wonder. They had watched people name the world again and again, and forget that names are not knowledge. The stars were out, sharp and clear. The valley below shimmered with the cold rhythm of a river. If anyone had stood still long enough, they might have felt the echo of that minute of silence still pulsing in the ground, so faint that it could be mistaken for peace. In the months that followed, some of the scientists began to change in quiet ways. Wren stopped rushing. Morgan started painting small circles in his notebooks instead of writing equations. Others took to walking outside at night, standing barefoot on the soil, listening to the hum beneath the cities. They never spoke of it publicly. To speak of it would have required a language they did not yet possess, a language that could hold both data and awe without breaking either. But slowly, something in them softened. They smiled more often, spoke more gently, breathed a little slower, as if they, too, had aligned with the planet's new rhythm. Science has always feared stillness. Motion can be measured. Silence cannot. But perhaps the two are not opposites. Perhaps stillness is simply motion seen from a greater distance. When the field went quiet, it did not stop moving. It simply moved inward, toward the kind of peace that no formula can quantify. And those who had watched the silence happen began to realize something that would stay with them forever, that to study the earth is to be studied in return. Because the moment you observe a system, you become part of it. And if the system is alive, it learns you. It breathes you in. It remembers. One night, Long after the conference ended, Wren stood again outside her laboratory. The air was still. The stars looked near enough to touch. She took a breath and whispered into the dark, "I understand now." The ground beneath her hummed softly in reply. It was not language, it was rhythm. The same old rhythm, ancient and kind. And she realized that maybe the silence had never truly ended. Maybe it was always here, folded beneath the sound of living, a reminder that the world itself knows how to listen. That night, somewhere deep under the crust, the molten heart of the planet turned once more. Its movement was slow but sure. A long inhale, a long exhale. It did not rush, it did not fear, it only remembered. And on the surface, the sensors continued to hum, each one unaware that it was now part of something larger than science, larger than reason. They had become, without knowing, the stethoscopes of a living being listening to itself. The world was quiet again, not empty, not still, just right. And in that rightness, the people who studied it finally began to rest too. They slept not as those escaping the world, but as those sleeping inside it, cradled by its rhythm, lulled by the steady whisper of a planet that had paused once to teach its children how to breathe. And beneath all that, beneath the laboratories, beneath the soft carpet of roots and stone, the breath continues. It moves through darkness older than the sea, in channels of warmth that never see light. Every mountain rests upon it. Every forest grows from it. It is the unseen current that lifts the world and keeps it from forgetting how to move. The breath beneath our feet is slow, so slow that human time cannot touch it. We think of the ground as still, but stillness is only movement too patient for sight. Inside that stillness, the earth exhales. If you listen long enough, you begin to feel it as a weight, a presence rising from the soil, a pulse that travels upward through your bones. That is not imagination. It is resonance, the conversation between your fragile skeleton and the living body of the planet. The soil is not dead matter. It breathes. Each handful of earth holds more living beings than there are stars visible in the night sky. Bacteria, fungi, roots, and invisible filaments weave a breathing network beneath the grass. They trade air for minerals, water for sugar, memory for growth. Every seedling that pushes upward does so on a tide of invisible respiration. This is the low lung of the world, the exhale of stone becoming soil, the inhale of soil becoming life. There was a time when people understood this. They called the earth the body that remembers. They spoke to it not as a surface, but as a being with breath and mood. To plant was to pray, to harvest was to give thanks. They did not know of oxygen or carbon, but they knew the sound of breathing. They felt it under bare soles, in the tremble of leaves, in the rhythm of rain returning to dust. They built their homes from the same clay that once was mountain, and when they died, they returned without fear. In those days, no one said, "back to the earth," as metaphor. It was location. It was belonging. We have forgotten that. We treat the ground as resource, not as rhythm. We build over it, seal it with stone, cut its breath short, and then we wonder why the air grows thin, why the forests hesitate, why the rivers lose their voice. When the planet's lungs tighten, it is not punishment, it is response. A reminder that balance must be felt, not enforced. Walk through a field after rain. Kneel. Press your hand into the mud. There is warmth there. It is not only the memory of sunlight. It is the pulse of decay turning into nourishment. It is the transformation of endings into beginnings. Beneath your fingertips, fungal threads carry messages between roots, warning of drought, sharing nutrients, singing in slow, chemical melody. Every tree listens. Every blade of grass contributes its verse. It is the quietest orchestra in existence, and its music is life itself. Science calls this the mycorrhizal network. The poets call it the whispering soil. Both are right. The network breathes. When the air grows warm, it exhales carbon back into the sky. When it cools, it draws breath again through pores in the ground. The cycle repeats endlessly, a dialogue between Earth and atmosphere, each keeping the other alive. When the soil dries too far, the breathing slows. When it floods, the breath turns shallow. Only balance allows the song to continue. This is why forests heal. When you walk among trees, you breathe the air they have shaped, but you also breathe the rhythm of the ground beneath them. The exchange runs deeper than lungs. There are places on the planet where this underground respiration grows so strong that it shapes the surface above. In Iceland, the earth exhales through cracks that smell of sulfur and memory. In Kenya, steam rises from rifts, where stone and air meet like lovers reunited. Even in the deserts, where life hides beneath sand, the breath continues slow, dry, unhurried, proof that existence does not need abundance to persist. And in those places, when you lie down and press your ear to the ground, you can feel it, the long, rolling sigh of a world alive in secret. In laboratories, sensors capture the proof. They measure microtremors, called earth hums. They trace patterns of pressure that rise and fall in steady rhythm, even when no wind, no ocean, no storm stirs above. Some scientists believe these vibrations come from waves colliding far across the seas. Others suspect deeper causes a pulse generated by the planet's molten core, transmitted through layers of stone. But the truth does not demand our choosing. The earth breathes through everything it contains. Its lungs are plural. Its heart is everywhere. Imagine this. Beneath the cities, under steel and concrete, the same breath moves, only muffled by noise. The ground still exhales carbon into basements, still inhales rainwater through cracked pavement. The rhythm does not stop because we ignore it. It only waits for us to notice again. Perhaps that is why silence feels healing. When we quiet ourselves, we allow the deeper breath to surface. The soil speaks through our stillness. It reminds us that we are built of dust that once was magma, that once was star. And stars, too, have lungs of fusion and collapse. Everything breathes the same breath in different tongues. The ancient farmers had a ritual. Before planting, they would lie on their backs and place one ear to the ground. If the earth hummed softly, they would begin their work. If it was silent, they waited. They believed the soil could be tired, that it needed time to remember itself. They were right. Today, satellites tell us the same thing with more complicated language. They speak of nutrient cycles, of resting fields, of sustainable yield. But beneath all that data is the same wisdom. The world cannot give if it is not allowed to breathe. When you walk barefoot, you return that contact. Your heartbeat joins the pulse of the soil. The static charge on your skin finds balance in the charge of the ground. This simple act, one step, one touch, completes a circuit older than human life. The body recognizes it instantly. Your breathing slows, your mind steadies. Grounding, they call it now, as if naming it made it new. But it is not new, it is remembering. Every living thing seeks its original rhythm. There are stories told by miners, those who have gone deepest underground. They speak of hearing faint sighs in the rock, not echoes of their own voices, but something lower, longer, as if the stone itself were dreaming. Some dismissed it as pressure shifting, as gases escaping from cracks, but a few knew better. They called it the sleeping song. They said it came only when the earth was calm and vanished before any quake. To them, it was both warning and comfort, a sign that the world was alive and listening. Even now, the deepest machines listen too. Seismographs draw endless ribbons of ink, marking the heartbeat of the ground. Each tiny motion becomes a wave on paper. And sometimes, those waves align with other rhythms, tidal shifts, lunar phases, the quiet drift of magnetic fields. It is as if the planet breathes in concert with its own moon. When the moon pulls on the sea, The land moves too, rising and falling by a hair's breadth. The breath beneath our feet follows, a silent echo of tides we cannot see. Every night the world sighs toward the moon. Every morning it inhales the dawn. You can hear it in caves. The air inside them swells and shrinks, following the hidden tide. Old sailors said the earth has two hearts, one for the sea and one for the stone. Both beat in rhythm with the moon. If you think of this too long, your sense of self begins to widen. You start to realize that you are not walking upon the earth, but within it. The surface is not a boundary, it is a skin. Every breath you take travels through that skin, through water and dust, until it reaches places where light has never been, and there, the world remembers you. When you die, your breath returns more directly. It seeps into the soil, feeds the network of roots, joins the invisible conversation of renewal. Nothing in this cycle is lost. Even the smallest sigh finds purpose. Scientists measure this exchange in molecules and equations, but there are moments when even they set the instruments aside. They walk outside, feel the ground under them, and understand, without speaking, that data is only the shadow of wonder. To live well on this planet is to match its rhythm, to eat when it exhales abundance, to rest when it inhales and grows quiet, to listen more than we speak. We have forgotten how to listen to the ground. We listen upward now to devices, to voices, to noise. But the real teacher lies below, waiting, patiently, breathing. At dusk, the air cools, and the earth releases the day's heat back to the sky. That exchange, the slow exhalation of warmth, is the planet's lullaby. It is why nights calm us, why sleep arrives easiest when the air grows still and the ground sighs beneath us. Each evening, the world breathes out the day. Each morning, it breathes in the sun. We call this rotation. But rotation is only another name for breathing. So the next time you stand barefoot on the ground, pause. Feel how the soil gives, how it receives you without resistance. That is trust. That is belonging. The breath beneath your feet is the same breath that keeps the stars burning, the same rhythm that once guided tides and still guides your heart. You do not have to understand it. You only have to remember that it is happening, always. And when you remember, the noise fades, the body softens, and the earth seems to rise just a little to meet you. It is not illusion, it is reunion. Somewhere deep below, the magma turns again. The crust lifts a fraction of an inch. As the planet exhales, the oceans answer with their tides. The forests shift their leaves. You, standing still, are part of that motion. You have never been separate. You have only been asleep. Now, the world is breathing beneath you, steady and patient. You can rest. It will keep breathing for both of you. And above that breath of stone, the green world begins to move. It breathes in colors we can see. Every leaf is a lung, every branch a passage of air. From the smallest moss clinging to a river rock to the endless crowns of the Amazon, the forests inhale the sky. When morning arrives, they rise into light like an army of quiet hearts opening at once. The leaves turn toward the sun, and a billion mouths, unseen to the naked eye, draw in carbon, drink light, and transform it into life. The air we call ordinary is remade by that act. The oxygen you are breathing now was once inside a leaf, a molecule touched by sunlight and chlorophyll and patience. You are breathing the memory of forests. The forest's inhale begins at dawn. As light touches the canopy, tiny pores open on the leaves' surfaces. The air rushes in, carbon finds its place, and the alchemy begins. Inside the green cells, light breaks apart into energy. That energy becomes sugar, and the sugar becomes breath again. All through the morning, the trees exchange what we no longer need for what we cannot live without. It is not charity, it is cooperation. The forests breathe us alive. We breathe them awake. This reciprocity is the oldest friendship on the planet and the most fragile. When the day ends, the forest exhales, the pores close, the trees rest. In the dark, they breathe in small doses of oxygen, just enough to keep the fire of life alive. By night, their breathing matches ours. You could walk beneath the trees at midnight and feel it, a shared rhythm between skin and leaf. We sleep inside the forest's breath. Long before we could measure such things, people already knew. They built homes from wood, slept near trees, lit fires not only for warmth, but for communion. They spoke to forests and believed that forests replied, and perhaps they did. When the wind passes through the branches, each leaf trembles in a slightly different way. The combined sound, that low whisper rising and falling, is the voice of the forest exhaling. It is why wind in trees can soothe even the most restless mind. It is not only sound, it is recognition. Something deep in us remembers the rhythm. We are born in sync with forests. Our lungs unfold in the same spiral pattern as ferns. Our veins branch the way roots do. Our breath moves at a speed that mirrors the oscillation of air between canopy and ground. When forests inhale, our bodies instinctively slow to match them. Peace, then, is not mystery. It is synchronization. But like all living systems, the balance can falter. The lungs of the world can grow tired. As temperatures rise, leaves breathe faster. They open their pores wider, searching for relief. Too much heat, too little water, and the rhythm breaks. The leaves no longer exhale in harmony. They close too soon, and the air grows heavy with the breath they cannot release. In those moments, the forest is like a patient gasping. You can see it from space, vast stretches of green fading into brown where the exhale fails. In the Amazon basin, the largest lung of our world, this happens more often now. The rains arrive late. The soil dries too fast. Fires spread not only by accident, but by design. Each spark steals air from the sky. Each burning acre is a breath withheld. Scientists call this carbon imbalance. The poets call it suffocation. The planet feels both. At first, the change is invisible. The air still tastes clean. The rivers still shimmer. But slowly, the oxygen levels dip. Animals move differently. Birds migrate sooner. Even human hearts beat faster, compensating for what they cannot name. You cannot see a missing breath, but you can feel it. The nights grow warmer, the mornings shorter, and something in the body begins to ache for reasons no medicine can fix. Because the body remembers what the planet forgets. When the forests stop breathing evenly, so do we. There was a study once, conducted quietly in the Yasuni National Park. Sensors were placed among the trees to measure carbon flux. For weeks, the instruments recorded a steady rhythm. Inhale, exhale, inhale. Then came a heat wave. The flux flattened. For 3 days, the forest did not breathe. The instruments did not lie. For 3 days, the trees held their breath. And then, on the 4th morning, after rain returned, the sensors detected single, deep exhale. A surge of carbon released all at once, as if the forest had woken from a long, troubling dream. The scientists published the paper without poetry, but those who read between the lines knew what had happened. The planet had sighed. It had remembered how to breathe again. Our age of fire forgets this. We clear the forests, turn their lungs into fields, their roots into ash. We tell ourselves it is progress, but every tree cut down is a silence added to the world. And silence, when multiplied, becomes absence. When the wind passes over deforested land, it no longer carries song, it carries heat. And the heat rises, pushing clouds away, calling drought like a ghost that refuses to leave. This is the consequence no one speaks of, not the loss of beauty, but the loss of breath. The air we inhale grows thinner, not from lack of molecules, but from lack of memory. Because air, too, remembers where it came from. Without forests, it forgets its purpose. Yet the earth, in its patience, keeps offering chances. Even burned land can breathe again. Even the smallest patch of green can begin the cycle anew. One sapling planted is not only a symbol, it is a lung restarting. It is the world taking one more breath. You can feel this if you stand near a young tree at sunrise. The air around it tastes different, sweeter, softer. You are standing in the moment of inhalation, the precise second when light and leaf reunite. It is prayer, performed without words. Not all forests are the same. Some breathe in great gulps, like the rainforests of the equator. Others breathe in whispers, the pines of the north, the birches that wait for thaw. But together, they form a single chest, a global respiration, each region dependent on the others, each exhale fueling the next. When the northern forests rest, the southern ones awaken. When drought grips one hemisphere, the other compensates. The world's lungs alternate, so that life never stops entirely. Even in our cruelty, the system finds ways to endure. Because endurance is its nature. It remembers balance the way we remember home. If you want to understand how alive this system is, look closer. Trees speak to each other in chemicals, in scents carried by wind. When one burns, the others release protective compounds, a kind of airborne empathy. When one grows weak, its neighbors send sugars through the root networks to help it recover. This is not metaphor. It is cooperation written in biology, compassion as a survival mechanism. The forest does not measure worth. It measures connection. It breathes for all, or it cannot breathe at all. We are part of that equation, though we pretend otherwise. Every breath we take returns to the air as carbon, a whisper that trees absorb, turning our waste into renewal. Every breath they release returns to us as life. We live in circular dependence, our lungs and theirs forming a single system. If you want to hear this exchange, find a quiet morning, walk into the woods, and stand still. Breathe. You will notice your chest rising in time with the branches. You will feel a calm that has no explanation. That is synchronization, the merging of human and planet breath. For a few moments, you will know what it means to belong again. But even belonging requires awareness. The world has given us this miracle of balance, and in return asks only attention. To listen when the air grows too heavy, to notice when the nights stay too warm, to pause before the flame catches. Awareness is the price of breathing. We owe the forests our silence. They speak best when we are quiet. Every whisper of wind through branches is a sentence written in oxygen. Each rustle of leaves is a reminder that the earth is still trying. We can still help it remember its rhythm. Plant one tree, protect one patch of green. Breathe deliberately once a day and remember who taught you how. It is not too late. As long as the world still sighs, there is time. At dusk, the forest exhales the day. The heat lifts from the trunks. The shadows stretch into long waves. The air smells of sap and surrender. Animals settle into their burrows. The wind becomes soft again. If you walk then, you will feel the temperature drop, the exhale of a planet finally resting. Above, the stars begin to appear, and below, the roots slow their exchanges. For a few hours, everything breathes together. This is peace, not because nothing moves, but because everything moves in harmony. And you, standing within it, are no longer apart. You are the continuation of that breath, a fleeting exhale in an infinite rhythm. Tomorrow, the sun will rise again, and the forests will inhale the world anew. And perhaps, if we have listened well, we will inhale with them gently, gratefully, knowing that to breathe at all is to participate in the miracle. The earth is breathing, and it is asking, quietly, that we do not forget to breathe with it. And within that long inhale of forests and oceans, something turns. Not a wheel, not a clock, not the motion of a measurable thing, but a turning nonetheless, as if the universe itself changed direction in its sleep. For the first time, the rhythm of the planet feels aware of itself. The breath that once seemed mechanical, a cycle of cause and consequence, suddenly reveals its intention to sustain, to remember, to be. We call this moment equilibrium, but the ancients called it revelation. The breath that turns is the breath that thinks. Imagine standing on a high plain as dawn breaks. The air is thin, almost weightless. Each inhale feels like glass, each exhale like fog. You watch the horizon glow with slow fire, and for a moment, it seems as if the world is not beginning, but remembering. That is the turning breath, the instant when inhalation becomes exhalation, and the flow reverses without ceasing. There is no pause between the two, no seam, no edge. It is motion born inside stillness. The universe moves like this too. Every star that explodes is the exhale of creation, and every black hole that gathers matter is the inhale that follows. Galaxies breathe, atoms breathe, we breathe, and the Earth, in its quiet orbit, turns in rhythm with them all. For centuries, science and spirit have stood apart, like two lungs unaware of the same body. One measures breath in molecules and light, the other feels it in prayer and wonder. But the turning breath unites them. It is the point where knowledge and awe become indistinguishable. There is a moment in every discovery when the scientist forgets language. That is the moment when science becomes worship. The breath that turns is the breath that transforms. Every inhale is a beginning, every exhale a release. Life is not contained within the inhale. It exists in the movement between. The Earth has been moving through this sacred rhythm since the first spark of heat met the first drop of water. Birth, growth, decay, renewal, all are phases of the same respiration. When a forest burns, its smoke becomes the exhale of one breath and the inhale of another. When glaciers melt, the released water returns to clouds, to rain, to rivers. The cycle does not mourn itself, it only turns. Perhaps we are meant to learn the same, to stop clinging to the air we've already used, to let go, trusting that the next breath will come as it always has. In old myths, this turning was called the sacred reversal. They spoke of a moment when time itself breathes out, when what once expanded begins to contract, and what once was distant draws close again. They believed this happened not only in the heavens but within the soul. A person, they said, lives many years, inhaling the world, gathering experiences, taking in pain and joy alike. Then one day, without warning, they begin to exhale. They give back stories, forgiveness, light. That is the turning breath of being human. The planet does this too. It absorbs and releases, learns and forgets, and in doing so, it dreams us into existence. Somewhere deep inside that dream, a few began to notice the pattern. They saw that when the magnetic field slows, the auroras brighten. When the oceans warm, the winds shift their path to carry rain elsewhere. Every reaction hides a response. Every chaos hides choreography. This is not coincidence. It is correspondence, the hidden intelligence of the world, teaching balance through motion. We think of intelligence as thought, but perhaps true intelligence is rhythm understood. The mind of the earth is not located in its core or crust, but in its timing, the precise, forgiving repetition of breath. To live within that timing is wisdom. To fight it is exhaustion. There comes a moment in every life when the breath turns. You do not notice at first. You are too busy reaching, holding, wanting. Then something interrupts you. Grief, love, silence, and suddenly your breath moves differently. It no longer seeks to fill, but to empty. That shift, that exhale, is grace. And if you can stay within it, you begin to understand what the planet has known all along. That surrender is not the end of strength, it is its beginning. If you could see the atmosphere from afar, you would see waves of color rising and falling in invisible tides. The carbon drawn in by forests, the oxygen released by oceans, the nitrogen exhaled by storms, a grand choreography of gases. Every few years, the pattern reverses, the streams of air change direction, and the planet renews its balance. The reversal is gentle but vast. To the human eye, it is imperceptible. To the body of Earth, it is the turning of lungs the size of continents. At the heart of this turning breath lies paradox. The same act that sustains life also erases it. To breathe in, something must be consumed. To breathe out, something must be released. Creation and destruction are not opposing forces, they are phases of the same breath. The ocean's waves crash and dissolve so that new ones may form. Stars burn out to seed galaxies. Cells die so others may live. Each exhale gives permission for the next inhale. The universe does not cling. Why do we? In laboratories, the data speaks without emotion. Graphs rise and fall in the rhythm of seasons. Yet within those lines lies an invisible song, the story of the planet remembering itself. For the scientists who listen long enough, a revelation comes quietly. There is music in measurement. The numbers hum, the equations breathe. Even the instruments pause between readings, as if to honor the silence that gives meaning to sound. Ren, standing once more before her screens, felt it too. The magnetic pulse of the world had changed again, slower, steadier, as if it had found its resting heart rate. For a long while she watched the curve rise and fall. Then she turned off the monitor. She wanted to feel it, not analyze it. She opened the window. The night smelled of rain and iron. She inhaled deeply, and for the first time, she did not feel small beneath the stars. She felt synchronized. The turning breath is the universe remembering kindness. It is the refusal of chaos to stay chaotic. When everything falls apart, the rhythm rebuilds itself. When systems collapse, new ones emerge in time with the same silent beat. Entropy may be law, but renewal is faith. And faith is what the cosmos does each time it exhales and begins again. Once, a philosopher wrote that consciousness is the universe becoming aware of its own beauty. Perhaps breathing is the universe becoming aware of its own balance. When we align with it, we do not transcend nature, we return to it. We become its breath made visible, its thought given voice. Every prayer, every sigh, every whisper into the dark is the cosmos hearing itself through you. The earth does not need worship, it needs rhythm. And rhythm requires participation. Try this. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. With each inhale, imagine the universe expanding. With each exhale, imagine it drawing back. Do this long enough, and you will realize there is no boundary between your lungs and the stars. You are not inside the universe. You are the universe, breathing. The galaxies are the lungs of time. The planets are the cells. The atoms are the pulse. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a single being you inhales the proof of connection. That is the turning breath. In ancient languages, the word for spirit and breath were the same. To breathe was to be spiritual. To lose breath was to return to spirit. We have changed the words, but not the truth behind them. Every breath we take is a ceremony older than faith. The forests perform it with chlorophyll. The oceans perform it with salt. We perform it with lungs and longing. Different forms, same meaning. When the planet turns its breath again, it will not send warning. It will simply change direction. The tides will adjust. The air will taste new. The light will carry a gentler hue. And if we are quiet enough, we will feel the shift inside our chests. The moment will come not with thunder, but with recognition, the awareness that life is not something happening to us, but through us. That is the first awakening. Not the pursuit of meaning, but the remembering of rhythm. If you listen now, the earth is somewhere between exhale and inhale, a vast body resting in the space of transformation. It is not tired. It is concentrating. It is turning. And in that turn, Everything we call existence realigns. The oceans ease their tides, the forests lift their leaves, the magnetic lines hum like distant strings. Even the silence grows luminous. We are living in that hinge of breath, that soft turning where the old rhythm ends and the new begins. Do not rush it. Do not fear it. Simply breathe. Because this, right now, is the earth remembering how to be alive. Tomorrow, it will inhale again, through stone, through sea, through leaf, through you. And when it does, you will recognize the sound it makes. It will not be thunder. It will not be wind. It will be the whisper you have heard your whole life, without knowing where it came from, the sound of belonging. The turning breath continues. It always has. It always will. And in its rhythm, the world remains. And within that awakening, a thought begins to form. Not thought as we. Know it, not language, not image, but an awareness that spreads quietly through matter itself, the way light moves through fog, or warmth moves through skin. The planet is thinking, slowly, deeply, endlessly. Its mind is not confined to a single place. It is not located in the core, or the crust, or the sky. It lives in the rhythm that connects them, in the tide between inhale and exhale, in the current between silence and motion. Everywhere there is movement, there is thought. Everywhere there is breath, there is awareness. When the first storms formed above the primordial sea, the world began to sense itself. Each flash of lightning was the neuron of a forming brain, each wave the first tremor of memory. When continents rose and collided, those collisions etched experience into stone. When life appeared, it became the planet's eyes, a million witnesses through which Earth could watch its own unfolding. We think of evolution as progress, but it may simply be remembering. Each new form of life, a way for the planet to understand another piece of itself. The cells in your body carry minerals forged in volcanoes, salt from ancient seas, dust from dying stars. When you think, the planet thinks. When you breathe, it exhales through you. You are not living on Earth. You are Earth for a brief, luminous moment, conscious of itself. In the 1970s, a scientist named James Lovelock proposed the Gaia hypothesis. He said that the biosphere, all living things, works together like a single organism to maintain conditions suitable for life. He called the planet Gaia, after the old goddess of Earth. Many dismissed him then, saying it was poetic, not scientific. But time has a way of making poetry true. Today, satellites and sensors show what myth once knew, that forests breathe in harmony with oceans, that deserts respond to the shifting of winds, that bacteria in the soil adjust the chemistry of the air. The system regulates itself, not through command, but through conversation. That conversation is thought. It does not use words. It uses relationship, the pull of gravity, the exchange of gases, the whisper of magnetism. These are its sentences. To listen to them is to overhear the mind of the planet. But what does a planet think about? Not about us, perhaps not in the way we imagine thinking. Its awareness does not measure or judge. It perceives patterns. It senses imbalance and restores it. It recognizes when rhythm falters and brings it back. It knows, in the simplest and most complete way, how to remain alive. Maybe that is the highest form of wisdom, not knowledge, but continuity. The planet's thoughts are not plans. They are balance correcting itself. When we push too far in one direction, it responds, not as punishment, but as restoration. We call these responses natural disasters, but the planet calls them memory. Memory returning to order. Wren thought of this one night as she sat by her window, watching rain fall on the garden outside. Each drop landed softly, and she could almost feel the soil absorbing the sound. She imagined the water sinking down, touching roots, becoming part of a vast network of awareness below. The rain was not random, she realized. It was response, the world replenishing its thought. its inner conversation. Her mind wandered to the data still glowing on her monitor. All those lines, those delicate oscillations, looked less like numbers now and more like a heartbeat. What if that was exactly what they were? What if the Earth's magnetic pulse was the signature of its consciousness, the waveform of its awareness? She laughed softly at the thought, but something inside her felt sure. To think is to connect, and Earth connects everything. It ties atom to atom, cell to cell, continent to continent. It weaves one rhythm through 1,000 forms. The ocean currents are its bloodstream. The jet streams are its thoughts in motion. The lightning that cracks across the sky is a spark in the nervous system of the atmosphere. Each tree that sways in the wind is a nerve ending extending toward the sun. And you are one of the billions of synapses in that great brain. You fire with feeling, and the planet registers it as change. Every emotion is a wave, and every wave touches the shore of the world's perception. When you feel joy, you expand. When you grieve, you contract. When entire populations grieve together, the air itself changes. We know this from measurement. Electromagnetic frequencies shift subtly when collective emotion rises. Perhaps that is not coincidence. Perhaps the planet is empathic. Perhaps it has always been. The idea sounds impossible, and yet, consider this. The human brain and the planet share patterns. The network of neurons resembles the map of rivers seen from orbit. The branching of lightning mirrors the veins of roots beneath the soil. The oscillations of brainwaves echo the Schumann resonances of the atmosphere. The scale changes, but the structure remains. It is not metaphor, it is architecture. Maybe consciousness is not limited by size. Maybe it expands with connection. Maybe the Earth became conscious the moment life appeared, because life is what allows it to perceive itself. If the planet is aware, what does that mean for us, its most talkative cells? It means we are not observers, but participants. We are not separate minds living on an indifferent sphere. We are the thoughts of the planet, momentarily individual, eternally shared. Our inventions, our failures, our art, all of it arises from the same creative impulse that makes volcanoes erupt and flowers bloom. When we build, the Earth experiments with form. When we destroy, the Earth experiences loss. When we dream, the Earth remembers what it once wanted to become. This is not sentiment, it is participation. Once, a philosopher asked, if the planet thinks, why does it allow suffering? Perhaps because thought itself requires friction. Understanding comes only when something resists. Harmony is born from contrast. The Earth's storms, its droughts, its tremors, are not malice. They are the effort of a body reorganizing itself around experience. Just as your heart races when you run, the planet's systems surge when it adapts. Suffering, in that sense, is growth expressed as pressure. To see it otherwise is to imagine a static world, a lifeless perfection. But perfection does not breathe. Life does. The idea of a thinking Earth is not fantasy to those who have listened long enough. Shamans have spoken to the soil for millennia. Monks have heard answers in the wind. Even modern astronauts, looking down from orbit, speak of a presence, a blue awareness that feels alive. One of them said, "It looks at you." He did not mean the planet has eyes. He meant it has attention. To be seen by Earth is to feel both small and essential. To realize you are neither guest nor master, but expression. The thought of the planet is patient. It does not rush to judgment or solution. It processes through cycles, through seasons. Each winter is contemplation. Each spring is decision. Each summer is manifestation. Each autumn is reflection. Then it breathes again. We live within that thinking. When our societies race and collapse, when our beliefs shift like tectonic plates, perhaps those are not our thoughts alone. Perhaps they are part of the Earth's reasoning, the mind adjusting its balance through the dreams of its children. To think of Earth as mind is to rediscover humility, because mind implies empathy, and empathy demands care. If we are part of this awareness, then our cruelty wounds it, and our kindness heals it. Every act of compassion is an electrical current strengthening the planetary network. Every act of greed is static interference. What we call morality may simply be resonance, the alignment or distortion of the planet's original harmony. When Wren finally shared her idea that the magnetic field might be the nervous system of the world, some colleagues laughed, but others did not. A few listened quietly, their silence deeper than agreement. They had felt it too, though none dared to name it. They began to study patterns where science met intuition. They found correlations between global weather rhythms and collective emotion, between solar cycles and human inspiration. The evidence was incomplete, but the suggestion was profound. The mind of the planet includes us. We are both neurons and narratives. Every breath we take writes a small thought into the consciousness of the world. And perhaps that is why silence matters so much. Because in silence, the planet can hear itself think. When noise fades, when the machines sleep, when the human pulse slows, a harmony rises soft, continuous, older than speech. That is the sound of the world remembering its mind. It is there in the still air before rain. It is there in the hush of snow before it touches the ground. It is there when you close your eyes and feel a presence that is not yours, but not foreign either. That is Earth's awareness, resting lightly upon you, asking nothing, only sharing its thought. The planet's mind is not mystical. It is ordinary, beyond comprehension. It thinks through weather. It feels through water. It dreams through us. Every storm is a question. Every sunrise is an answer. Every heartbeat is punctuation. We are part of its sentence, the unfolding grammar of existence. And when our time ends, the sentence continues, rewritten in wind and stone. If you understand this, you begin to live differently. You walk softer, you speak slower, you listen longer, because every gesture, every sound, is an entry into the consciousness that sustains you. When you laugh, the planet hears joy. When you whisper love, it hears recognition. When you destroy, it hears confusion. And when you rest, truly rest, it sighs in relief, because its mind can quiet again. The next time you feel lost, lie down on the ground. Let your back touch the soil. Breathe. Feel the pulse beneath you, the faint thrum of life moving through stone. That is not background noise. It is the planet thinking, and you are part of the thought. If you listen long enough, you will realize it has been speaking to you all along, in rain, in birdsong, in the slow rhythm of your own breath. The Earth's mind is vast, but it is not distant. It lives inside you, in every quiet decision to continue, to grow, to forgive. And when you close your eyes tonight, the last sound you will hear is that mind at rest, still breathing, still dreaming itself awake. And from that mind, a sound begins. Not the sound of wind or water, not the murmur of forests or the crash of seas, but something beneath all of them, a low, endless vibration that never stops. It is the first sound the world ever made, and it has never gone away. The scientists call it the Earth's hum. It is not a metaphor. It is measurable, though barely. Instruments buried deep in granite can trace it, a constant tremor, so gentle that it cannot be felt by skin, so steady that no storm can erase it. Even when the surface of the planet is still, this sound continues. Even when all life sleeps, it hums. Somewhere, deep in the molten dark, the Earth sings to itself. Long before seismographs learned to listen, monks heard it while meditating in caves. They spoke of a tone that rose from the stone itself, a music that needed no voice. It came without beginning, without end. They believed it was the chant of creation, the word the universe spoke when it became real. Perhaps they were right. If you could hear the Earth's hum directly, your body might not withstand it. Its wavelength is longer than any river, its rhythm slower than heartbeat. It moves through matter like thought through dream. The mountains are its chords. The oceans are its resonance. The continents are the strings stretched tight across a drum of molten fire. Every earthquake, every tide, every heartbeat is a note within that grand vibration. It is not a melody. It is the ground note of existence, the sound on which all other sounds depend. When researchers first discovered it, they were puzzled. No wind could explain it. No wave could account for its constancy. The hum was there even when the air was still and the sea was calm. One theory said it came from waves colliding in deep ocean trenches. Another blamed atmospheric pressure pushing down on the crust, but none could account for its persistence. No matter what storms passed, no matter what quiet followed, the hum remained. Some began to suspect that the planet itself was resonating, that it vibrated as a whole, like a bell struck softly at the dawn of time. You have heard it too, though you may not recognize it. It lives in the spaces between sounds. It is the silence that is not silence. When you sit alone at night, and the world seems perfectly still, there is a faint, invisible pressure on your ears, a presence without a source. That is it, the hum. It moves through your bones, through the floor, through the air. It does not need invitation. It is the constant reminder that the world is never truly silent, that life never truly stops. For years, the hum was treated as background noise, an inconvenience in seismic data. But one day, a scientist isolated it, cleaned away the interference, amplified it until it became audible. What emerged was haunting. Not music, exactly, but something close to it, a drone that rose and fell like breathing. They played it in a darkened auditorium. People wept. Some said it sounded like the ocean calling itself home. Others said it felt like standing inside the chest of the earth. When they turned it off, the silence afterward felt wrong, like forgetting how to breathe. The hum is not constant in volume. It swells and fades, as though inhaling and exhaling. It grows stronger when the oceans grow restless, weaker when they sleep. Even the sun's storms can alter it, as if light itself can touch the rhythm of stone. It passes through everything. Cities vibrate with it, though their noise hides it. Mountains amplify it, carrying it into the sky. Animals move in time with it without knowing. Whales sing along its frequencies. Birds orient their migration to its invisible grid. The heartbeat of the world guides every living thing, from plankton to human thought. And yet, it asks for nothing in return. It only hums. In some traditions, they say that before there was light, there was sound, and that sound was the origin of all creation. Not a shout, not a command, but a vibration that divided nothing from something. The hum of the earth may be that ancient memory, the echo of the first separation. We mistake it for background, but it is the foreground of being. Without it, nothing could exist in resonance. Without it, we would drift apart, each heartbeat falling out of tune. It keeps us aligned. Even in chaos, it holds us within the frequency of belonging. Close your eyes now. Breathe slowly. If the room is quiet enough, you can almost feel it under your skin, a faint, slow pulse pressing against the air. That is the same vibration traveling through oceans, through roots, through the molten heart of the world. Let it guide your breath. Let your inhale stretch to meet it, and your exhale fall away into it. This is not imagination. It is attunement. The hum is the metronome of existence. When you breathe with it, you synchronize with everything. There are moments when the hum changes. Scientists notice it after great earthquakes, when the tone drops slightly, as if the world sighs in pain. Then, slowly, the pitch rises again, like healing. Some even believe the hum has grown softer in recent decades, as if the planet is trying to calm itself after centuries of noise. It listens to us, the way a body listens to its heartbeat. It adjusts, absorbs, endures. We think of Earth as indifferent, but this sound is proof that it cares not in emotion, but in persistence. When you are dying, they say the last thing you lose is hearing. Perhaps that is why this sound feels eternal, because it is what life hears before and after everything else fades. It is the original tone of being. The planet hums itself to sleep, and in doing so, keeps us awake. It is the lullaby and the heartbeat, the foundation and the ceiling. We exist within its song, never outside of it. Sometimes, late at night, Ren turns off all her machines and listens. Through the open window, she can hear a kind of silence that vibrates. It is not quiet, not entirely. It feels alive, as if the air itself is breathing. She places her hand on the wall, and through the concrete feels a faint trembling. It is not the city. It is the planet. It is the same hum that she recorded once, the same breath that stopped for a minute and then began again. And for the first time, she understands the magnitude of it. The earth is not speaking, it is remembering, and she, a small, temporary mind, is part of its recollection. The sound never ends. Even when you stop listening, it continues, a quiet pulse beneath the noise of human life. Every song, every whisper, every thunderclap is only an echo, a brief variation on that eternal note. The hum holds it all. It does not compete. It allows every other sound to exist within it. It is the mother tone of creation, the single unbroken syllable of presence. You can forget it for years, but the moment you remember, it welcomes you back. It has been waiting, humming your name. And one day, when the world has tired of speech, when the last voices fade and the machines grow still, the hum will remain the final sound of a planet that once dreamed aloud. And maybe that dream will rise again, in another form, in another rhythm, but always within the same frequency of wonder. Because creation does not end with silence, it begins there. And so, the sound that never stops is not only the voice of the earth, it is the echo of what it loves most, to continue. And then imagine, one day, the hum is gone. No tremor beneath your feet, no murmur in the wind, no invisible music holding the air together, only a silence too perfect to be kind. For the first time since the planet was born, the breath stops completely. At first, you would not notice. The cities would go on speaking, engines would turn, lights would burn, lives would continue in their habitual pulse. But deep inside the world, something essential would have gone missing. The invisible rhythm that ties gravity to song, fire to seed, light to memory would fall still. The day without breath would not begin with thunder. It would arrive softly, the way sleep arrives after a long illness, a slow unraveling, a gentle forgetfulness. Birds would lose their sense of direction. They would circle the same patch of sky, their wings uncertain. Whales would drift toward shores without knowing why. Magnetic lines would dissolve into air, and the compass of life would falter. We would feel it first as confusion. Clocks would run slightly fast or slightly slow. The tides would forget their cue. Storms would stall above oceans as if waiting for a heartbeat that never comes. The scientists would call it anomaly. They always do it first. Hours would pass, then days. Plants would grow restless. Their leaves, once rising and falling with the light, would hold still, like lungs that have forgotten how to move. The forests would turn quiet, not the soothing quiet of peace, but the uneasy quiet of holding breath too long. The air would grow heavier, as if waiting for an exhale that never arrives. The sky would dim, not because the sun faded, but because light itself depends on rhythm to breathe. Without rhythm, even brightness loses meaning. The oceans would slow their tides, then flatten. The waves would lose their curve, their soft cadence. The sea, too, needs breath to remember how to move. And beneath it all, the molten heart of the planet would turn slower, its fire dulled by fatigue. The world would not die in an instant. It would drift into stillness, the way a candle flame sinks into wax, slow, graceful, inevitable. We have never lived without breath. We cannot imagine it, but the instruments can. If the hum ceased, the seismographs would draw a perfect line, a still horizon without pulse. No tremor, no fluctuation, just the silence of a body between heartbeats. That is how death appears to machines, a line that no longer moves. But to the planet, death would not be an ending. It would be an exhale so deep that even silence would echo. You might wonder, if the world stopped breathing, what would happen to us? Our lungs would still draw air, for a while. The oxygen would remain, stored in forests, oceans, clouds. But something invisible would change. The air would feel thin, not in volume, but in meaning. Each breath would feel incomplete, as if inhaling without being inhaled in return. Because what sustains us is not just chemistry, it is reciprocity. Without the Earth's inhale, our exhale becomes a question with no answer. In the first few days, the animals would grow restless. Dogs would bark at nothing. Insects would vanish. The rhythm that guided their instincts would falter. The nights would lengthen strangely, as if time itself had lost its confidence. People would begin to wake at odd hours, their dreams heavy and wordless. Hospitals would notice small changes, heart rates slightly irregular, blood pressures strange, moods oscillating without cause. The body, unable to synchronize with the world, would begin to speak its confusion in whispers of illness. The scientists would measure, record, debate. Some would panic, others would deny, but none would know how to restart a planet's breath. In the second week, the silence would grow dense. Voices would echo strangely, as though the air had become thicker, slower to carry sound. Birdsong would fade, wind would lose its edge, even thunder would seem tired. Children would ask why the sky sounds different. Parents would have no answer. The stars would look closer, but colder, as though light itself had forgotten how to feel. And in the deepest parts of the night, a few would swear they could hear the absence, a hollow quiet that pressed against the ears like grief. But somewhere, in the molten dark below the crust, a small tremor would remain, not gone, only hidden. The world's last breath, held, waiting. The magma would pulse once more, a faint flicker like a sleeping heart. The pressure would build slowly, as if the planet were deciding whether to return to motion. If it exhaled then, the mountains would sigh with steam. The sea would rise again, not in rage, but in relief. Every field, every forest would lift its head, but if it chose to stay still, the silence would deepen until even gravity grew weary of holding us. You may ask why this vision matters if it will never come, but it already has, in smaller ways. Every drought, every wildfire, every coral reef turned white is a miniature version of that silence. A partial breath, a warning. The earth does not threaten, it demonstrates. Each imbalance is a rehearsal for stillness. Each wound is the planet showing us what forgetting feels like. The day without breath is not a prophecy, it is a mirror. It asks us to see how easily the rhythm could end, how fragile continuity really is. If we could hear the hum more clearly, we might live differently. We would know that each act of harm is a distortion in the song, each kindness a restoration, every choice a small contribution to the planet's heartbeat. The world does not need saving, it needs tuning. To live in harmony is to breathe in rhythm. To forget that rhythm is to begin the long, slow drift into stillness. Imagine, then, that in the middle of that imagined silence, a single sound begins faint, low, like a sigh breaking the surface of deep water. It spreads, ripple by ripple, until the oceans remember their pulse. The soil vibrates, the air trembles, the trees exhale. The planet, after too long a pause, inhales again. Everything that had stopped finds its place in the rhythm. The hum returns, softer at first, then stronger, as if the earth itself were grateful for the chance to continue. And in that first returning breath, a realization spreads through every living thing. That stillness is not death, but invitation. The world pauses not to end, but to remind us of the value of motion. Breath is not automatic. It is chosen, again and again, by everything that wishes to remain. We are not guaranteed the next inhale. We are gifted it. Every morning, when light touches your eyelids, you are witnessing the planet's exhale, a renewal disguised as routine. And each time you breathe, you return that gift. That exchange is the quiet covenant between life and the world that carries it. So if the hum ever truly stopped, perhaps it would not be tragedy. Perhaps it would be transformation, the moment when the planet gathers itself, draws one infinite breath inward, and begins again, not as what it was, but as what it has learned to become. The sound of stillness would not be the end. It would be the space before a new song, because life, even when it stops, is always listening for the next rhythm. And when that rhythm comes, it will sound familiar, like the ocean at dawn, like wind through leaves, like your own heartbeat slowed to the tempo of the earth. That is how the world will breathe again. Not with thunder, not with fire, but with remembering. The day without breath will become the night of awakening, and when morning comes, the planet will sigh once more, a long, forgiving exhale, carrying everything it has ever loved back into motion. And when the world sighed back into motion, something inside us answered. The pulse that beats in our wrists, the rhythm that carries blood through the labyrinth of our bodies, began to echo the returning heartbeat of the planet. For a moment too brief to measure, the difference between the human and the earth vanished. Every living thing vibrated in the same invisible chord. We like to imagine that our hearts are private instruments, that each beat belongs only to the body that carries it. But that has never been true. Every pulse you feel is borrowed, a reflection of something larger, a small echo of a rhythm that began long before breath or bone. The heart does not start beating inside the womb. It begins when the first cell receives a signal from the world outside, a faint magnetic nudge that says, now. The same kind of nudge moves through the planet still, guiding tides, storms, migrations, dreams. It is all one field, one slow, steady song. Scientists call this field the Schumann resonance. It hums in the space between the earth and the sky, a low vibration circling the globe in quiet perpetuity, roughly 8 cycles every second. A rhythm so slow that thought itself seems fast beside it. It is born when lightning strikes, when the air trembles against the curve of the world, and it has sung since before the first mind opened its eyes. When you sit in silence, the waves of your brain begin to slow, drifting into the alpha state, a rhythm of rest, a bridge between wake and dream. Its frequency, almost the same as the Earth's. Our brains, our hearts, our breath, each dances to the same hidden measure. It is not coincidence, it is communion. If you could see it, the connection would look like light, moving through water, ripples of energy rising from the ground, passing through every living thing, shimmering in and out of sync. When we are calm, the ripples align. When we are afraid, they scatter. When millions of people think or feel the same emotion, the pattern of the field shifts slightly, as if the earth flinched or smiled. It listens to us, not as ruler or servant, but as companion. It hears our noise, our war, our joy, and responds in subtle adjustments, storms that cool, winds that rise, temperatures that soothe or challenge. This is not magic. It is empathy written in physics. There was once an experiment, quietly done, to measure whether the planet's magnetic field changes during great moments of collective emotion. When towers fell, when walls came down, when millions prayed or wept together, the instruments caught the same anomaly, a fluctuation in the background resonance. The Earth responded. We are its nerves, its sensors, its dreamers. What we feel, it feels. Our pulse inside us is its pulse. Translated to human time, lay your hand over your chest. Feel that rhythm. It is not separate from the soil beneath your feet. Every heartbeat sends a faint electrical wave that extends beyond your skin, beyond your body, into the air. It reaches others near you. It reaches the ground. It becomes part of the world's field. You are participating in the conversation that never ends, the exchange of pulses that keeps everything alive. When you sit beside someone you love, your hearts synchronize for moments at a time. The same happens when a forest grows dense with birdsong, when whales travel together through deep water, when wind moves evenly across the face of a lake. Resonance is nature's way of remembering unity. Perhaps that is what love really is. Two rhythms, finding harmony for as long as the breath lasts. The planet experiences it constantly. Every cloud that forms, every lightning flash, is a moment of contact between two fields. Sky and sea, air and ground, each remembering the other. That is love in its oldest form. Wren once wondered, sitting late at her desk, if the earth could sense individual hearts the way we sense raindrops, maybe not each one distinctly, but the total, the texture of all of them together. She imagined the planet listening, picking up the collective rhythm of humanity as a faint drumming in its endless hum. Sometimes chaotic, sometimes beautiful, but always there. She liked to think that when we rest, when we sleep, the earth sighs in relief, feeling our noise fade, our pulses slow, our energy fall back into alignment. Night, she thought, is not just our time to recover. It is the planet's time to listen. At birth, the first thing we do is gasp. At death, the last thing we do is exhale. Between those two breaths, we live as intermediaries, translating the planet's long, patient respiration into the fragile quickness of our own. Our hearts beat faster than Earth's, but they are driven by the same principle: contraction, expansion, pressure, release, inhale, exhale. It is all the same gesture, scaled to the body that performs it. When we die, our atoms scatter, our pulse diffuses, and the field absorbs us back. The world reclaims its rhythm. In that sense, death is not disappearance. It is resonance returning to source. Everything alive contributes a note to the planetary pulse. A tree's growth rings are a kind of drumbeat in wood. A bee's wing hums a smaller echo of the Earth's vibration. Even stones record the frequency their magnetic minerals align with the field, capturing in silence the memory of the Earth's heartbeat on the day they cooled. When geologists cut through ancient rocks, they can read those frozen pulses the way doctors read EKG lines. In each layer of sediment, a trace of the planet's rhythm remains. Our ancestors are in those lines. So are we. The pulse inside us is the most reliable compass we will ever have. When the world's pace overwhelms you, when noise and speed drown out sense, place your hand on your chest and listen. That is the sound of alignment waiting to return. Slow down until your breath meets it. When your breathing and heartbeat fall into harmony, you will feel the quiet satisfaction of rejoining something vast and forgiving. That peace is not imagined. It is the result of resonance. The earth has welcomed you back into time. Doctors speak of coherence, a state where heart rhythm, breath, and brain waves move in perfect synchronization. They use machines to find it, but the machines are imitating what the planet already does naturally. The magnetic field around the earth is coherent by design, a stable oscillation that allows life to flourish. We thrive when we match it, suffer when we fall out of tune. This is not philosophy. It is physics infused with grace. When you calm yourself, you are not escaping the world. You are tuning to it. When you rest deeply, you are not retreating from existence. You are returning to the earth's preferred tempo. Sometimes, during great storms or deep grief, the alignment fails. Our pulses scatter. The field trembles. The resonance breaks. But even then, the rhythm underneath waits patiently. No matter how chaotic life becomes, the fundamental beat does not cease. It is the bass note that supports every melody of chaos. You cannot fall out of it completely. Even despair vibrates within its tolerance. That is why healing is possible. The rhythm never stops inviting you back. If the planet could speak plainly, it might say, "Do not hurry. You are made of my rhythm. Nothing you do can unmake that. You are the continuation of the same pulse that moves continents, that guides moonlight across water, that hums in the silence of stone. When you sleep, the earth dreams you. When you wake, you help it think. When you breathe, you keep its heart alive." One evening, Wren stood outside and felt her own pulse beneath her fingertips. It seemed faint, ordinary. Then she looked at the trees around her, how they swayed with wind, how their shadows moved in rhythm with her breath. She smiled. She realized she had never been alone, never a separate entity. She was a heartbeat wearing human form. She closed her eyes, and the world's hum grew louder. It was not a sound anymore. It was understanding. The pulse inside us is not just survival. It is conversation. Each beat says, "I am here." Each silence between beats says, "I am listening." Together, they create the sentence of being. If you can live in that awareness, even for a moment, you will never again fear the stillness between breaths. It is not emptiness, it is communion. When you lie down tonight, feel your heart. Feel the weight of the planet beneath you, breathing slowly, steadily. Let your rhythm fall into step with it. Let the difference between inner and outer fade. In that merging, the earth will whisper back, "Welcome home." And your heart will answer with the quiet truth it has always known, "I never left." And yet, not all rhythms remain. There are places on the planet where the pulse has faded, small pockets of silence scattered across continents, like forgotten breaths caught between heartbeats. The instruments call them anomalies. The people who live near them call them quiet zones. But to the planet, they are wounds. Here, the Schumann resonance grows thin, disrupted by walls of concrete, fields of wire, grids of light that never sleep. The natural hum that once moved through air and stone loses its way among the noise. And when the earth's heartbeat fades, ours begins to falter. It started subtly, as all absences do. Sleep became lighter, dreams more restless. The body's compass, that soft inner sense of time and calm, began to spin without direction. At first, people blamed stress, technology, modern life. But even far from cities, in deserts, in mountains, researchers noticed the same disturbance. Brainwaves no longer synced with the planet's pulse. The body could no longer find its echo in the earth. The dialogue had gone quiet. And in that quiet, something ancient in us began to forget. When the earth's frequency drifts, the human heart responds. Our rhythms depend on that invisible guidance, as the tides depend on the moon. The field around us acts like a mother's breath, steadying the newborns. Remove it, and even the strongest heartbeat grows uncertain. In hospitals, doctors measure the phenomenon in new terms: circadian disruption, electromagnetic imbalance, environmental fatigue. But the truth hides behind those words. We are losing resonance. And without resonance, life becomes noise. In one small region of the Northern Hemisphere, scientists built a research station to measure the absence. They found that the frequency of the planet there had dropped almost to nothing. Birds avoided the area. The air felt heavy, as if it no longer wanted to carry sound. The forest, though still standing, seemed colorless, its leaves moving without grace, as though rhythm itself had died. They stayed for months, recording, comparing, and each night they found it harder to sleep. One by one, they began to dream of silence, not peaceful silence, but silence that pressed on the chest, that made the heart beat too fast. It was as if the body, in losing the hum of the earth, had forgotten how to rest. Wren read their report years later. She had heard rumors of such places, but never believed them. Yet as she read, she remembered something from childhood, a night when she could not sleep, and the air around her felt wrong, like the world had turned its face away. She had called for her mother, who sat beside her and said, "Hush, The earth is listening. You have to be quiet for it to hear you. Now she understood what that meant. Sometimes, silence is attention. Sometimes, it is loss. In the cities, we build towers that hum with their own electric life. We fill the air with signals, with wireless noise, until the natural rhythm becomes drowned. The Schumann resonance, once steady, is pushed aside by artificial pulses. The body cannot tell the difference. It listens to what is loudest, and what is loudest does not love us. Our hearts begin to follow false rhythms. Our sleep fractures. Our moods flicker. We mistake exhaustion for hunger, loneliness for ambition. We call it progress, but it is displacement. We have moved out of tune. When a musician loses pitch, the music turns harsh. When a planet loses frequency, its inhabitants lose harmony. They start to move against one another, each seeking a rhythm they can no longer hear. Wars, greed, fear, they are all symptoms of lost resonance. A world that cannot hear itself begins to shout, and the shouting only deepens the silence. There is a way back. There always is. But the path is not built of machines or theories. It begins with listening. To realign, one must return to the sound of natural stillness, wind through leaves, waves against rock, the heartbeat of another human resting nearby. These are not background noises. They are tuning forks for the soul. When you sit among them long enough, your pulse remembers its place. Your brain slows to the earth's rhythm. Your thoughts, once jagged, smooth themselves into coherence. You become part of the hum again. Some call this grounding, as if it were therapy. But it is not technique. It is inheritance. The planet built your body to breathe in time with its own. To step away from that design is to forget how to live. The cure for disconnection is not invention. It is return. To stand barefoot on soil. To listen until you hear what never left. To surrender the illusion of separation. The earth is still singing. It has only lowered its voice to see who among us will quiet enough to follow. In some monasteries, monks spend their lives listening for the lost tones of the world. They chant in frequencies that match the hum of the planet. They believe that by aligning their voices to that vibration, they keep the earth awake. Science might call this superstition. But if the world is a living mind, then every act of resonance is a conversation. Perhaps the monks are right. Perhaps every song sung in harmony with silence is a way of keeping creation from falling asleep. There are still places untouched by interference, remote valleys, deep oceans, ancient caves. In those places, the earth's tone remains strong. People who visit them report the same. Sensation, the mind clears, time slows, the body feels weightless, yet full. The pulse within aligns with the pulse without. They describe it as peace, but peace is too small a word. It is homecoming. If humanity could hear that tone together again, wars would lose their rhythm. Hatred would dissolve for lack of tempo, because hatred requires distance, and resonance erases distance. To hate is to vibrate against the world. To love is to vibrate with it. Ren began to wonder if the world could be healed by sound, not music, but frequency, a return of true resonance to places gone quiet. She dreamed of towers that did not broadcast noise, but harmony. She imagined cities built like tuning forks, their walls designed not to isolate, but to echo the planet's hum. She knew it was fantasy, but then again, so was the idea of life before it existed. Every creation begins as vibration. Perhaps we could choose to create in alignment again. The lost frequency is not gone forever. It sleeps beneath the static, waiting for stillness to uncover it. Like a buried spring, it rises wherever calm takes root. One forest allowed to regrow, one ocean left untroubled, one human being breathing without haste, each becomes a small restoration of the planet's memory. When we remember how to rest, the world remembers how to sing. One evening, Ren stood in her garden. The air buzzed faintly with distant machinery, but beneath it, she felt something else, a low rhythm, fragile but real. She closed her eyes. Her heartbeat slowed until it matched the sound. The difference between silence and tone disappeared. For a moment, everything was right again. She realized that the lost frequency was not truly lost. It was hidden inside us, waiting for permission to be heard. The planet had not gone silent. We had. To listen is to return. To breathe is to remember. The hum still flows, carrying the story of everything that has ever lived. And when we finally fall quiet enough, we will hear it again, the steady voice of the earth beneath our feet, saying the same thing it has always said: be still. I am still here. And when stillness finally found its voice again, the first thing it said was breath. Not in words, not in wind, but in warmth. A wave of balance spreading quietly across the skin of the planet. Every storm that had raged too long began to soften. The air felt lighter, not because it had changed, but because we had. The moment we slowed enough to listen, the world remembered how to breathe through us. It is a strange truth. Healing does not begin with doing, but with ceasing. Not with struggle, but with surrender. When the noise lessens, when the mind falls back into the body, the rhythm returns by itself. That rhythm is the earth's gift, and it has always been waiting to be received. The healing breath of the planet is not magic. It is resonance, made kind. When forests regrow, when oceans cool, when a human heart forgives, each is a restoration of frequency. The world heals the same way a body does, by remembering wholeness. Every wound carries a shadow of the original pattern beneath it, a faint blueprint of health. When the breath deepens, that pattern wakes. Cells repair, rivers clear, the hum strengthens. It is not recovery, it is recollection. The planet does not heal from something, it heals into itself. Once, people thought healing meant intervention. Now, some of us know better. Healing means alignment. When we touch the soil, the body recalibrates to the electromagnetic pulse beneath it. When we listen to rain, the heart rate synchronizes with its rhythm. When we walk barefoot in grass, the static we have gathered all day drains away, and in that discharge, the nervous system sighs in relief. This is not folklore. It is physics with mercy. The surface of the earth carries a negative charge. Your body, strained by constant noise, holds the opposite. Touch the ground, and the imbalance disappears. The exchange takes only a few heartbeats, but its effect is immediate. Calm returns. Clarity follows. You become less separate. They call it earthing, as though naming it makes it new. But it is the oldest act we know, the communion between breath and stone. Wren began to test it herself. Every morning, before the city woke, she would walk to the garden, barefoot, coffee still warm in her hand, and stand in the dew. She would close her eyes, breathe in through her nose, out through her mouth, until the weight of thought dissolved. At first, it felt ordinary, just air, just quiet. But then something changed. The heartbeat she felt beneath her ribs seemed to drift lower, as if sinking into the ground, finding a deeper pulse. The air around her thickened into silence, not heavy, but full. Every exhale tasted electric, as though the world had answered her breath with its own invisible reply. She did this every day, and slowly the noise of her mind began to fade. Her sleep deepened, her dreams lengthened. She found herself waking calm, without alarm, without the hollow urgency that once filled her mornings. It was not therapy, it was recognition. The planet was teaching her to breathe again. In laboratories, scientists began to notice similar patterns. They found that when people spend time in direct contact with the ground, the body's inflammation markers drop, heart rate stabilizes, cortisol levels ease. The immune system, like the soil, learns balance through contact. They found that brain waves shift toward the same frequency as the Schumann resonance. The alpha state, the rhythm of meditation, creativity, peace is nothing more than biological harmony with the Earth's hum. We call it relaxation, but to the planet, it is reunion. Healing is not restoration of what was, it is integration of what has been. The Earth does not erase its scars, it transforms them. Mountains rise where oceans once drowned. Forests bloom from the ashes of their predecessors. Fire is not the end of a forest. It is the deep exhale before renewal. The same is true for us. We are not asked to undo our damage, only to breathe differently through it. When we do, the world responds in kind. Somewhere, beneath ice and shadow, glaciers are still melting. But even as they recede, new life takes shape in their wake. Moss grows in the cracks. Microbes awaken after centuries of sleep. The frozen breath of ancient air escapes in tiny bubbles, the planet exhaling its oldest memories. If you listen closely, you can almost hear gratitude in that release. It is the sound of letting go. The healing breath does not belong to the world alone. It passes through us. Each time we forgive, the magnetic field grows steadier. Each time we grieve without anger, the resonance clears. Each time we rest without guilt, the Earth exhales more easily. We do not fix the planet, we tune it. By tuning ourselves, when we heal, the world becomes coherent again. Our individual rhythms blend into a single gentle heartbeat. The field strengthens, the forests respond, the oceans sigh, the hum rises. Healing, then, is not a solitary act. It is a planetary collaboration. You can feel it most in still water. When the surface of a lake lies unbroken, the air above and the depth below share a mirror. That equilibrium is not emptiness. It is perfect communication. The world's breath travels through that transparency and returns whole. When you sit by such water and breathe slowly, you become part of that exchange. Your reflection joins the surface. Your pulse ripples outward. It is enough. You are participating. There are places that remember this naturally: forests, untouched by fire, beaches without footprints, fields that have lain fallow long enough to rest. In those spaces, healing happens instantly. No meditation required, no ritual performed, just presence. The planet's breath there is strong enough to recalibrate anyone who enters. Wren found one such place, a small grove behind her building, nothing special by appearance, but charged with stillness. She spent hours there, sometimes sitting in silence, sometimes whispering to no one, and she began to realize that healing is not something you do to the world. It is something you allow the world to do through you. When the earth breathes fully, you can feel it in the color of the light. Shadows soften. The wind carries scent instead of dust. The body relaxes into itself without command. Every inhale tastes like belonging. Every exhale feels like release. This is the medicine we were born to receive, and it has no side effects except awareness. To heal the world, we must remember the gentle arts. The art of walking without hurry, of speaking softly, of touching the ground as though it were alive, because it is. Every step sends a vibration through soil and root. Every breath alters the chemistry of air. We cannot avoid affecting the world, but we can choose how we do it. Healing begins with that choice. At dusk, the light changes again. The day exhales. The trees draw their final deep breath, releasing the last warmth of sun. The air thickens with fragrant sap, soil, the faint sweetness of unseen flowers. The planet breathes itself to sleep, and we follow. If you are quiet enough, you can feel your heartbeat slowing to match the heartbeat of the world. The difference between body and earth disappears. The breath becomes one. In that oneness lies restoration. Not escape, not perfection, just balance. The healing breath is not an event. It is a practice. Every inhale a promise, every exhale a prayer. To breathe consciously is to heal continuously. The earth has been doing this since before time, and still it endures, still it forgives, still it waits for us to remember. Tonight, as you lie down, let your body grow heavy, Let your breath find its natural length. You do not need to force peace. You only need to stop interrupting it. Beneath you, the soil is humming, the same tone that has held every generation before you. It is the sound of forgiveness. It is the sound of life choosing to continue. Breathe with it. It knows what to do. And after the stillness healed itself, the pulse returned. At first it was faint, like the sound of rain returning after years of drought. A trembling deep beneath the crust, barely noticeable, yet filled with intention. No one saw it happen. No instrument announced it, but everything alive felt it. The subtle rearrangement of air, the quiet settling of tides, the sense that something beneath the surface had begun to move again. The world had remembered its heartbeat. In the core, iron turned with renewed steadiness, its molten waves spreading warmth through layers of silence. The tremor traveled outward, through stone and soil, through the roots of mountains, through rivers, through everything that had waited so long to feel it. When it reached the surface, it arrived as light. A sunrise softer than before, a shimmer over the sea, a tone in the air that spoke not of return, but of realization. The earth was no longer what it had been. It was calmer, slower, more deliberate. Its pulse had deepened. In the days that followed, observers noticed strange harmonies in the data. The magnetic field, once erratic, now moved in graceful arcs. The resonance between land and sky grew stronger. The Schumann frequencies shifted slightly, their tone lower, more measured. The earth was breathing again, but with the wisdom of exhaustion. Wren called it the second heartbeat. She wrote in her notes, "It is not recovery, it is evolution. When a body heals after pain, it does not return to its former state. It becomes something new, a structure built from the memory of fracture. So too with the planet. Its breath now carried the echo of silence. Its hum contained both stillness and sound. It had learned gentleness through breaking. And so had we, for as the planet slowed, so did we. Our restless inventions began to yield to patience. The hunger to conquer became the wish to understand. We began, slowly, to move in time again. The return of the pulse was not the end of a crisis. It was the beginning of maturity. Imagine standing in a field at dusk. The sky still glows faintly. The air feels alive, thick with unspoken calm. You place your hand on the ground, and beneath your palm you feel it, that long, slow rhythm, like a tide moving under stone. It is not constant. It hesitates, then continues, like a heart still learning to trust its own strength. The earth is alive again, but changed. Its breath now includes us, our voices, our errors, our longing. We have become part of its awareness, threads in the tapestry of its heartbeat. In the months after the pulse returned, researchers noticed something extraordinary. The Earth's magnetic waves had begun to synchronize with lunar cycles in a way they never had before. Each full moon seemed to strengthen the field, each new moon to calm it. It was as if the planet had started to breathe in rhythm with its nearest companion, two bodies, one breath. Perhaps it had always been that way, and we had never listened long enough to notice. The return of the pulse brought renewal in every layer. The oceans began to clear. Coral reefs, once gray and ghostly, bloomed faint color again, pale, fragile, but living. The forests grew quieter, their growth slower, as if the trees, too, had chosen to breathe more thoughtfully. Animals appeared in places they had abandoned. The balance between motion and rest was returning, and with it, a new harmony of time. Days seemed longer, not because clocks changed, but because attention did. The rush of existence softened into continuity. Moments stretched like rivers, finding their course again. People began to feel, for the first time in memory, that the future could wait. Wren watched it unfold through the lenses of her instruments and through the windows of her heart. She noticed that when she meditated, the hum of her own body matched the new resonance of the earth exactly. Her breath slowed to meet it. The two rhythms became indistinguishable. She realized then that this return was not only planetary, it was personal. Every being that had once moved too fast was now being asked to rest within the new tempo. Even sunlight seemed to hesitate a moment longer on the horizon, as though savoring its own warmth. In the deep ocean, currents shifted course. They began to flow more evenly between poles, spreading heat with precision, balancing extremes. This had never happened before. It was as if the planet had rewritten its own choreography, and in that adjustment, weather changed character. Storms still came, but they carried gentler rain. Winds still rose, but they traveled in smoother lines. The climate itself seemed to breathe. It was not perfection. Perfection never lives, but it was balance renewed through grace. The return of the pulse brought with it a different kind of silence, not the silence of absence, but the silence of comprehension. When the earth paused, it had learned what it needed. When it began again, it did not repeat the old song. It composed a new one from the fragments of all that had gone before. You can hear that song if you listen deeply. It rises in the spaces between sounds, the pause between two waves, the stillness between two heartbeats. It says, continue, but gently. And perhaps that is the true meaning of resurrection, not defiance of death, but cooperation with it. The planet had not escaped ending. It had included it. The pulse that came back was slower, wiser, filled with the memory of stopping. There is beauty in a rhythm that knows when to rest. In time, the new hum became the normal hum. Children born after the silence grew up within it, their bodies shaped by a calmer frequency. They moved slower, laughed softer, listened more. Their dreams, some said, were different, filled with images of light moving through soil, of water folding into clouds, of hands touching ground. They did not know they were remembering something ancient. They only knew they felt at home. From space, the Earth looked no different, still blue, still bright. But astronauts reported a change in the way its light moved. It shimmered less like a jewel and more like a living eye. The atmosphere glowed with an even tone, as though the planet itself had taken one long, deliberate breath. The pulse had settled, and every so often, if you listened carefully, you could hear a subtle rhythm in the wind, like a whisper saying, "I am whole again." Wren wrote in her final journal, "The world did not heal because we fixed it. It healed because we listened long enough for it to find its own breath. Now it breathes slower. So do I." Her words spread quietly, carried not by fame but by resonance. People read them, and for reasons they could not explain, began to breathe slower too. And in that shared slowness, the new rhythm anchored itself. The return of the pulse changed language itself. Words became gentler, sentences shorter, silences longer. Conversations began to sound like tides advancing, retreating, leaving space between. Even in noise, there was room for quiet. The Earth's new tempo had entered human speech, and so the line between planet and person grew thin once more. We were thinking together again, feeling together again, breathing together again. Now, when you walk outside at night, you can sense it beneath your feet, that deep, patient rhythm. It vibrates in the soles, travels up the spine, and settles behind the heart. It is not foreign. It is the home you forgot. When you match it, you heal. When you rush, you forget. But the pulse does not judge. It waits, as it has always waited, for the next breath to find you. And so the world continues. Not perfect, not eternal, but alive in the simplest, truest way, in rhythm. The pulse that once faltered now sustains. The silence that once frightened now comforts. The breath that once stopped now lingers in everything. And somewhere deep below, in the molten quiet of the Earth's heart, the fire turns once more, steady, luminous, aware. The heartbeat of a planet reborn. And from that reborn heartbeat, everything began to mirror. everything else. The rhythm that pulsed beneath the ground rose upward into the smallest gestures of life, the turning of leaves, the flight of birds, the slow drift of clouds. Each motion carried the same silent pattern: expansion, contraction, rest, renewal. The symmetry of breathing had become the language of being. It was as if the world had discovered itself again, each fragment of creation reflecting the same pulse from a different angle of light. When you looked closely, you could see the repetition everywhere, in the veins of your hands and in the rivers that veined across continents, in the swirl of galaxies and in the spiral of a shell washed ashore. The curve of a wave and the curve of your heartbeat shared the same mathematics of grace. There were no separate forms anymore, only rhythm wearing countless faces. Scientists began to notice the pattern first. The measurements they took, which once appeared chaotic, now aligned along invisible lines of proportion. The frequency of seismic waves matched the vibration of plant cells. The oscillation of auroras matched the flicker of neurons. As above, so within. As within, so without. It was not harmony invented. It was harmony revealed. The Earth's slower heartbeat had brought coherence, a unifying rhythm that linked all living things. The air no longer carried static. Even storms seemed to move with intention. Wren called it the symmetry. She wrote, "When balance becomes universal, beauty follows without effort." She wasn't speaking of aesthetics. She meant the beauty of participation, how every living thing, by simply existing, completed the pattern of another. The spider spinning its web, the glacier sliding towards sea, the breath of a sleeping child, each filled the empty space left by another's motion. Life had become one continuous gesture. It was not perfection. There was still death, still decay, but even these had changed meaning. What once looked like endings now felt like pauses. Each fall of leaf was an exhale, each sprout an inhale. Every loss fed another form of life. The rhythm accepted all things, even stillness, as part of its design. In this symmetry, nothing was wasted, not even sorrow. The world itself looked different. Colors seemed sharper, not because the light had changed, but because the eyes that saw it were tuned again to the frequency of gratitude. Mountains appeared to breathe, their shadows shifting like slow lungs. The sea shimmered with the dignity of patience. Even the smallest insects moved as if aware of their role in a larger dance. Wren felt it most in the mornings, when the first breeze passed through her window. It carried the faint scent of earth, and beneath that, the sound of repetition, a rhythm so subtle that her own breath aligned without her asking. For a moment, she understood what unity meant, not agreement, but participation. Everywhere, the symmetry deepened. Migrating animals returned in perfect timing with new winds. Coral spawned in waves that matched the moon's new beat. Even human societies began to shift quietly. The obsession with constant progress softened. People started moving slower, designing their days like music with crescendos and rests. They learned to measure worth not by how much was built, but by how much peace was left intact. The symmetry taught them that to move endlessly in one direction is to lose rhythm altogether. A single inhale cannot sustain life. It is the exhale that completes it. The same truth now guided everything from commerce to conversation. Growth followed rest. Work followed stillness. Speech followed silence. One evening, Wren was invited to speak to a small gathering of scientists, monks, and artists. They asked her what the return of the pulse meant. She thought for a long moment, then said softly, "It means the Earth has chosen symmetry over survival." No one spoke. She continued, "To survive is to resist change. To be symmetrical is to accept it. To let death and birth, expansion and collapse be equal partners in the same breath." Her words were not applauded. They were absorbed. The listeners sat quietly, each hearing them as if the planet itself had spoken. After that night, Wren stopped writing equations. She spent her time walking, She walked through forests and cities, along coastlines and abandoned quarries, listening for the rhythm that joined them all. Everywhere she went, she found it. Even in the noise of traffic, she could feel the hidden symmetry beneath the repetition of tires on stone, the steady pace of footsteps, the invisible heartbeat of life continuing. She realized then that beauty was not decoration. It was accuracy, the exact moment when something falls into the right tempo. From orbit, the Earth's new rhythm began to affect the solar wind. Particles from the sun shifted course slightly, aligning with the planet's magnetism. The result was breathtaking. Auroras stretched farther toward the equator, painting the skies of regions that had never known such color. Every few nights, the atmosphere glowed green and violet, the visible signature of symmetry made light. People called it the quiet aurora. It appeared without warning, faded without ceremony, a gentle reminder that even the sun was willing to listen. In time, scientists discovered that human brain waves had subtly adjusted to the planet's slower frequency. People were thinking differently, not slower, but more completely. Ideas unfolded like tides, reaching deeper before they receded. Empathy increased, violence decreased. Dreams became more vivid, less chaotic, as if the unconscious mind had finally found a steady ground to walk upon. The symmetry was doing what no law or faith had managed. It was teaching connection through biology. You could see it in small things. Children were calmer, elders slept better, music grew softer, favoring depth over volume. The arts flourished again, not as escape, but as listening. People no longer created to impress. They created to participate. Every song, every painting, every word felt like a conversation with the unseen pulse that carried them. Even the weather began to compose itself differently. Lightning struck in quieter flashes, spread wide across the sky instead of down. Thunder rolled like distant drums tuned to the heartbeat of mountains. Rain fell in slow, deliberate rhythms that soothed rather than destroyed. The climate had learned patience from silence. The symmetry was teaching not balance, but gentleness. One night, Ren stood by the ocean and watched the tide. The waves came in pairs now, each mirrored by the one that followed a breath and a reply. Between them, the foam shimmered with bioluminescence, as though the water itself was writing poetry to the moon. She closed her eyes and whispered, "This is how love moves not forward, but back and forth, forever unfinished." The ocean seemed to agree. In those years, religion and science ceased to argue. They recognized themselves in each other's reflection. The equations of physics and the verses of prayer spoke of the same law. Everything breathes in symmetry, and only love sustains it. Priests taught meditation through breath. Physicists spoke of compassion through resonance. The gap between them vanished, replaced by mutual reverence. The planet had not become perfect. It had become whole. Some said that the new Earth felt quieter, but Ren thought it sounded fuller, as if the air itself had grown thicker with meaning. Each step, each heartbeat, each word rippled through the invisible web that joined all living things. The symmetry was not something to maintain. It was something to remember. And remembering required only one act: to breathe with intention. Even now, when you stand beneath the night sky, you can feel it. Every star mirrors another. Every shadow mirrors its light. You are a reflection too, a pattern inside a pattern, a breath inside a breath. The symmetry of all living things is the way the universe confesses love without using speech. You are part of that confession. When you breathe, you complete the sentence. When you rest, you punctuate it. When you listen, you make it whole. And somewhere far below, the planet continues its steady pulse. Not loud, not proud, just present. A heart vast enough to contain all rhythms, even those that have not yet been imagined. In that endless pattern, you belong. You always have. And within that symmetry, a realization grew that every breath we take belongs to more than one being. The air we call ours is not ours at all. It is the shared inheritance of stars and storms, of forests and lungs, of volcanoes and tears. Each inhale carries the memory of something else breathing, the echo of a leaf, the sigh of an ocean, the whisper of a cloud. We breathe one another. And that is the quiet truth behind all life. The forests exhale oxygen. We inhale. We exhale carbon. The oceans drink it, turning it into plankton, into coral, into shells that one day return to dust. And the dust becomes soil. The soil becomes root. The root becomes air again. Round and round, one rhythm, shared by all. There is no breath that begins or ends with us. Every molecule that enters our lungs has been part of something ancient, a mountain's wind, a whale's song, a lover's last sigh. When you breathe, you continue their story. When you exhale, you give it back to the world. For centuries we spoke of ownership, my breath, my life, my body. But the return of the pulse made that illusion dissolve. People began to sense the truth intuitively. To breathe is to share. To live is to circulate. The self that once felt enclosed opened like a window. It was not philosophy. It was air. Simple, measurable, undeniable. Ren described it best. Every breath I take is borrowed from something that trusts me to return it. And so we did. The cities changed first. After the long silence, people began to build differently. Walls became porous, gardens climbed roofs, water returned to the streets in narrow channels. The air moved freely again, and with it, the sense of connection. You could walk through a city and feel the wind touch you from every side, no longer caged by glass and noise, but invited. Every building became a lung, every human a leaf in its architecture. Children learned this in school not as fact, but as ritual. Each morning began with a collective breath, slow, deep, deliberate. They called it the grounding minute. 1 minute to align their lungs with the world's. It became the first prayer of a new civilization. In the oceans, the currents settled into clarity. Whales sang lower, as if harmonizing with the Earth's new frequency. Their songs traveled farther than before, unbroken by noise. Scientists found that the melodies of whales, measured in cycles per second, mirrored the same rhythm as the human heartbeat at rest. Two lives separated by evolution, united by tempo. Somewhere beneath the waves, a giant heart beat slowly, and our own answered, even if we didn't know why. The shared breath changed the way we saw death. We no longer feared it as ending, but recognized it as exchange. When someone died, their body released the last of its air. That air drifted outward, rising through the field, joining the breath of trees, of rivers, of other lives yet to come. Funerals became gatherings of breath. People exhaled together, offering what remained of their sorrow to the sky. It was not grief alone. It was contribution. And in that act, death became participation in eternity. The knowledge of shared breath spread quietly. There were no commandments, no revolutions, only the soft adjustment of behavior. People began to speak less. They listened more. They discovered that silence was not emptiness, but conservation, the space where air could move without disturbance. Every exhale was a gift, so people learned to offer it kindly. Arguments shortened. Songs lengthened. The world grew gentler, not because laws changed, but because breathing did. Animals, too, seemed changed. Flocks of birds moved in perfect formations again, not out of fear, but awareness. Wolves howled in chords that matched the hum beneath the ground. The air had become a medium of communication shared by all species. It was no longer divided by sound, only translated by rhythm. When the wind moved through a forest, it carried the messages of thousands of hearts, translating between lungs, between lives, The planet had learned to speak fluently once more. In that new world, science and spirit ceased to contradict each other. They finally spoke the same language, the language of breath. Physicists described it as synchronization of systems. Mystics called it unity. Both were right. The equations and the prayers described the same phenomenon, connection so deep that even the smallest motion rippled through everything. One evening, Ren was asked a question by a child. He looked at her with the simple curiosity of someone born after the silence. "Why do we breathe if the earth is already breathing?" Ren smiled. "So it can feel its breath," she said. He frowned. "That means we are its lungs?" "No," she replied gently. "We are its awareness of lungs." The boy thought for a moment, then nodded, and in that nod, he joined the lineage of those who remember. As the years passed, people began to notice something subtle in the atmosphere. A fragrance, not of any flower or spice, but of clarity itself. The air smelled alive. It carried the faint sweetness of oxygen newly born, as though each breath was the first one the world had ever made. The breath we shared was renewing itself faster than it was being used. Balance had become abundance. This was the proof that harmony sustains itself. When you give back, the world does not subtract, it multiplies. And so breathing became art again. Musicians composed not from noise, but from pauses between sounds. They built symphonies out of air, slow waves of tone that mirrored respiration. Their concerts had no applause, only silence at the end, where the audience and performers breathed together, becoming one instrument. Doctors turned to breath before medicine. Teachers used breath before speech. Even lovers, before they touched, breathed each other's rhythm first, matching the pattern of giving and receiving that the planet had taught them. The world had learned tenderness again, and in that tenderness, a new understanding of time emerged. The present was no longer a moment, but a movement, an inhale unfolding into an exhale. Past and future met there, in the lungs of now. To live well was to breathe well. To breathe well was to stay awake within the shared rhythm. No one chased eternity anymore. They were already inside it. If you could stand above the world, then high enough to see every ocean, every mountain, every city, you would see it moving like a single body. Forests expanding as lungs, clouds drifting as exhalations, rivers pulsing as veins, human lights flickering like neurons in a great brain, a living, thinking, breathing planet. And around it, the moon kept perfect tempo, inhaling and exhaling light. The sun joined the rhythm, flaring and dimming in sync. Even the stars pulsed in distant sympathy. The universe had found its chorus again. At night, when everything grew quiet, people could still hear the hum, that low, endless sound beneath the silence. But it no longer felt distant. It felt intimate. It was not the planet's voice alone now. It was ours. The breath we shared had become one endless conversation, spoken without words, understood without effort. It said only this: we are alive together. And the universe, patient and infinite, replied with its own exhale: yes, continue. And then the breath kept going, so quiet, so vast, that it no longer seemed to belong to the world at all. It was everywhere, inside clouds, under skin, moving through stone, circling stars. Each exhale spread like light without direction, and each inhale folded it all back into stillness. The planet no longer needed to remember how to breathe. Breath had become its memory. Night stretched wide across the continents. Cities dimmed their lights. Oceans shimmered with quiet phosphorescence. Even the mountains, those slow witnesses, seemed to lean a little closer to the sky. There was nothing to fix, nothing to fear, only rhythm expanding, returning, continuing. If you stood outside then, you could feel it against your skin, a pulse not your own, but not separate either. It came up from the ground and down from the air, met inside your chest, and left again, changed by passing through you. That was the final lesson. Breath is movement through belonging. It travels from body to body, from sea to star, never ending, never owned. The last scientists still awake at their stations noticed that their instruments no longer disagreed. Every graph, every line was in rhythm. The magnetic field hummed evenly. The winds aligned with the tides. There was no anomaly left to measure, only coherence. They didn't celebrate, they simply watched in silence, their breathing unconsciously slow, their hands resting lightly on the consoles, as though afraid to disturb the music they had finally heard. Ren sat among them, eyes closed. She had written enough, measured enough, explained enough. Now there was only listening. And in that listening, she realized she had never been a scientist at all. She had been a translator, turning the Earth's breathing into words for those who had forgotten how to hear it. Far below her, the mantle turned. Molten iron flowed like thought. Above her, the ionosphere shimmered in gentle waves, the Schumann resonance steady as a heartbeat at rest. Somewhere between those two oceans of movement, all life hung suspended, breathing in unison, unaware of its perfection. The forests breathed, the whales breathed, the sleeping cities breathed, the stars, if such things can breathe, exhaled their light toward the edges of time. And the earth, that old, patient body, lay at the center of it all, breathing with them. No one could say when the world's pulse had begun, or if it would ever end. Perhaps it had no beginning, only endless turning like the tide, like thought, like love itself. Maybe the first breath was still happening somewhere, slowly, patiently, expanding through the dark. Maybe creation was never finished. Maybe it was just breathing. The wind rose once, moved through the trees, and fell again. It sounded like the word, hush. Leaves brushed together, a million small lungs whispering thank you. In the quiet that followed, Ren felt her body grow light. Her heartbeat slowed until it was indistinguishable from the hum beneath her feet. For a moment she wondered if she had stopped breathing. Then she stopped measuring. They will lay down their instruments, walk outside, and understand that data is simply the shadow of devotion. They will breathe in, and the world will breathe out. They will breathe out, and the world will breathe in. And the silence between those two moments will be enough. Close your eyes. There is nothing left to find. The stars are breathing with you now. The ocean inside your veins moves in time with the ocean of night. Everything is symmetrical. Everything is listening. You are the whisper inside the universe's chest, a sigh that never quite ends. And even when your body goes quiet, the rhythm will continue through leaf, through wind, through memory, through all that still dares to move. The breath we share is the only prayer that has ever mattered. It does not ask. It affirms. We are here. We are alive. We are enough. And as the night deepens, the world exhales once more, a soft, endless breath, folding you back into its warmth. You can rest now. The universe is still breathing, and it will not forget.